And welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So on today's episode, we're going to be heading over to the Moon Tower for a party. We're going to be heading over to the Emporium to play some pool. And then also, we're going to be heading down to Houston to go get Aerosmith tickets. All right? On today's episode, we're going to be covering 1993's Dazed and Confused. Now, I can't do this all by myself and alone, so I brought a guest with me. You've heard this guest on my previous episode from Cruel Intentions. She is a wife, a dog mom. She's a lover of movies. She's my sister. Please welcome Sarah Heidelberg. How are you doing today, Sarah?
I'm good.
That's good. It's all good. We have our dog here, or her dog, really. And she's going to be a good girl, I hope. But, yeah, anyway, we're going to talk about this movie and, talk about how wonderful it is. So we just watched it, respectively, like yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So, as we normally do on the show, we'll talk about, our history with the film, talk about some fun facts, production history, things like that. And then we'll go into a plot summary. Now, Sarah, if I may ask, what is your history with Dazed and Confused? If you didn't already listen to our Cruel Intentions episode, we went on a whole tangent about Dazed and Confused. But, what is your history with it, if you can remember? Like, when do you remember seeing it first? And just what is your connection with this movie, I guess?
I don't remember the first time I watched it exactly. I want to say I was a teenager.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Maybe 13, 14, I want to say, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I don't have a distinct memory of the first time I watched it, but I know I've watched it a lot.
Is this in your collection downstairs?
It is in my collection of movies.
Love that.
I'd say I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good time to watch it when you're a teenager, because you're a little young, because it's a high school movie,
yes.
But you can still appreciate it. And it's just such an easy movie to go back to and watch, because you just know what's going to happen, but the music's good. Mm-hmm. It's just a fun movie to watch.
Yeah. I think you said it to me earlier, but you were saying that this is a movie where you can kind of turn your brain off a little bit.
Yeah. Which
I appreciate, and I love those kinds of movies.
You don't have to think about it. You just watch it, and it's just a fun movie to just kind of sit back and
it's a comfort,
relax.
I think, for some people.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. No, like, Clueless is that for me at some point. Like, I could just put Clueless in the 100%. Background, and I'm just like...
I have, several comfort movies like that.
Yeah, where you can just put it on. You don't have to think a whole lot about it. I think I even said, too, like, Jawbreaker's a little bit like that for me.
And Romy and Michelle.
Because you can't think about it too much.
It's like that for me.
You can't think about it too much, because if you think too much about it, you're going to be like, oh my god, this movie's not good. But then you're like, and with Romy and Michelle, it's always good, but like, you do have to turn your brain off a little bit, being like, how the hell can they afford this little apartment on her salary and then her being unemployed? What the hell?
Exactly.
But anyway, so yeah, my history with Dazed and Confused, I probably watched it because you had it, probably, to be honest. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that, like, this film is one that I will always say, not that they would show it in schools or whatever, but I absolutely think this is a movie where I'm like, you should show this on the last day of school.
You should.
For, like, seniors.
Yes.
Like, it's just one of those
or whatever
things.
Day their last day is.
Yeah.
They're special.
It's one of those things where I'm just
they
like...
They don't actually have their last day of school in a sense. Like,
right.
Like all the other people. Like, they have... whenever they graduate.
Like, you show this like right before they graduate or whatever. It's just
things were like that back in the day. I don't know.
I know.
Well, I know when I graduated, it was like we were out like at the beginning of May, or I'm sorry, not the beginning. I wish. I think I graduated like the 31st of May.
Right,
but then like everybody else was in school to like the 15th.
Yeah, that was like me. I think I graduated on June 1st.
So like freshman, but things were different because I don't know if you know, but I think I've asked Mom this because our mom grew up in the 70s. She was a teenager in the 70s. So she's actually like a kind of a fun person to like ask about this because it's like, is this an accurate portrayal of like how you actually like were things really like this? Like,
and I have her findings from that.
Did they pinpoint that?
To get you try to get back on track. So I did talk to her yesterday because she did watch it yesterday on Tubi, where it is streaming right now.
That's where I watched
it. I have a Blu-ray of this with Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which we might talk about that a little bit.
Are they together?
Yeah, there's a double feature with both of them in it. We'll talk about it. But anyway, so... It's great. So with this movie, though, so our mother, I asked for her findings about how accurate it was. So she said that the muscle cars were accurate. Definitely.
Like what? Like Oh God, what was that guy's name? Pickford.
Pickford has his, and then Wooderson has his.
The orange car.
Yeah, like because like our mom's like one of her first boyfriends, I think, had a muscle car like that or whatever.
So that was accurate.
I thought it was hilarious when she said that the having to zip your pants up while lying down was accurate because she said she did.
She's told me that before, yeah.
Which is just like really funny. And then she also said just like partying in the woods, that was kind of an option too.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, I mean, not that I did that really or anything. We're boring, y'all. But anyway, but that is something because we grew up in a particular part of Maryland where it's both suburban and then there's also rural areas as well. And I definitely heard of people going out into the middle of a field in the more rural parts and just like drinking and getting drunk. Do you know what I mean? So like more so we saw that with like people just going to their parents' house or like whatever, and they just do that when you're underage. But it's just one of those movies, like I said, I mean, it's something where you got to watch it when you're a kid, like a teenager, because you're just like, oh my God, it's like so... But then you're watching these 20-somethings being teenagers, which is just like really silly. But yeah, no, it's just one of those films. And I probably watched it from you, honestly. And but I'm so glad I did. But anyway, without further ado, though, we already got a little bit of that. But let's move into some of these figures of this movie. So Dazed and Confused was released September 24th, 1993. I was but a babe in that. And
you were a babe.
I was a babe. And this was written by Richard Linklater and directed by him. I was a toddler babe. You toddler babe. And then directed by Richard Linklater. It was also produced by him, Sean Daniel, and James Jack. We'll get into them. We'll also say the budget was about $6.9 million or so, and it had a box office of about $8 million. We're looking at Rotten Tomatoes. We're looking at 92% on the tomato meter and a 90% audience score. So that's good. We're looking at a 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb and a Letterboxd score of 3.9 out of 5. So I got some critical response, like poll quotes from people who have reviewed this movie. So we got Malcolm Johnson from the Hartford Courant, who says, watching this documentary-style picture is like being clean and sober at some endless 70s party where everyone else is drunk or stoned. We then have Bruce Bennett from Spectrum in St. George, Utah, who states, has the look and spirit of the time down pat. Unfortunately, it captures only the worst of the typical misogynistic, foul-mouthed, druggy losers of the period. And then we have Kevin Carr from 7M Pictures, who states, glorifies bullying and tries to balance it with pseudo-intellectual contemplation. So people have their claws out. For our cast of characters, we have Jason London as Randall, quote, Pink Floyd. We have Joey Lauren Adams as Simone Kerr, or Carr. Mila Jovovich as Michelle Burrows. Sean Andrews as Kevin Pickford. Rory Cochrane as Ron Slater. He goes by Slater. Adam Goldberg as Mike Newhouse. Anthony Rapp as Tony Olson. Sasha Jensen as Don Dawson, but he's normally known by Don. Marissa Ribisi as Cynthia Dunn. Dina Martin as Siobhan Wright. Michelle Burke as Jodie Kramer. Cole Hauser as Benny O'Donnell. Christine Harnos as Kay Faulkner, which is one of Jodie's friends, I believe. Wiley Wiggins as Mitch Kramer, little brother of Jodie. Mark Vandermeulen as Tommy Houston, who's one of Mitch's friends. Esteban Powell as Carl Burnett. Jeremy Fox as Hirschfelder. Ben Affleck as Fred O'Banion, but he goes by O'Banion.
I did not know that was his first name in the movie.
I know, right?
Although I may have looked that up.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Jason O. Smith as Melvin Spivey. Kristen Hinoyasa as Sabrina Davis. So it looks like Christine, but it's Kristen, I believe. Parker Posey as Darla Marks. Matthew McConaughey as David Wooderson, but he goes by Wooderson. Catherine Averill Morris, or I think she goes by Catherine Morris, as Julie Sims. Nikki Katt as Clint Bruno, and an uncredited appearance by Renee Zellweger as a character by the name of Nessie White. So
I like how they gave her a name that they credited her.
Literally, and we'll get into it.
Miss Bridget Jones.
Miss Bridget Jones, Miss that girl from Texas Chainsaw, whatever. It's a whole thing. But anyway, so a little bit about this film. So before we move into any sort of plot summary or anything, this film was pretty much brought about because, so according to when he was asked in an interview what he wanted to do after his first movie. So Richard Linklater had done a movie called Slacker, which was in the early 90s, and it got some like attention in the indie movie circle, right? So when he was asked what he wanted to do after Slacker, he said that, I wanted to make this teenage rock and roll spree. I knew I wanted the story to take place on one day in the spring of 1976, but at one point it was much more experimental. The whole movie took place in a car with the characters driving around and listening to ZZ Top. Lee Daniel, the director of photography, described the concept as it would have been 2 shots. One of a guy putting in an 8-track of ZZ Top's Fandango, and one of 2 guys driving around talking. And the film would actually be the same length as the album, and you would hear each track in the background as a source. Eventually, Linklater decided to write a script to, quote, represent different points of view, the first draft of which took about a month to complete. And so Universal Studios then fast-tracked production on this Linklater script, jumping ahead about 30 different films that were in production or in development at the time. And actually, there's a fun little documentary. I think it's on, because this movie's in the Criterion Collection now. It's been in there for a couple years, but I think there's one on YouTube. It's called Making Dazed or something like that. And we both have watched it. And from my understanding, this, Richard Linklater, he made this movie and he got some notoriety from it a little bit. And really what this was brought up as was making an American Graffiti for the 70s. Now, I have seen American Graffiti. I don't think you have, right?
No.
So pretty much, if you don't know what American Graffiti is, it is George Lucas's first, directorial thing before Star Wars. It's pretty much the day in the life of these seniors who are in the 60s, and they drive around, and it's very much a California movie. I think it's set over there, and shout out to my California listeners. But anyway, but that film is following. It's very much about the 60s cars and just what it was like kind of being a teen in the 60s, even though most of these people were not teenagers. But anyway, so that was how this came to be pretty much, was that they wanted to do American Graffiti for the 70s. And so they ended up, Richard Linklater, he had set himself apart, I guess, and they were like, we want you to do this movie. They got in these 2 producers, Sean Daniel and James Jacks, and they put this movie into production pretty much. What I will say, though, is according to this particular documentary, it seemed like the actors, for the most part, got along, and we'll get to that. But it appears that Richard Linklater and James Jack didn't always get along very well. Would you agree from watching that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't get along very well. It was very much just Richard Linklater had never done anything like this before. This is his first studio movie. I think the other movie he made was maybe $25,000. It was low budge.
Very low.
Very low budge. So, I mean, here you are having this $6 million budget for a studio, and you're wanting to have this loose kind of movie and deviate from what the script is and, have all that, which is great. And I think that's why people really liked being in it and they liked being a part of it. But that also is really crazy for a producer to be like, oh my God, what are you doing? Shooting stuff that's not even in your script. So yeah, him and James Jack didn't exactly, James Jack talks about how he had a point where he had punched a telephone pole or something because he was just so pissed about this. And he says in the documentary, he says he punched it, and he called Sean Daniel, the other producer, and be like, I split open my knuckle or whatever, it hurts or whatever. And then I think Sean Daniel just said something about it's better than hitting Richard, okay? It's better than hitting Rick. So that just goes to show that it wasn't always the easiest, but it ended up making a pretty good product, I think. But it wasn't always the best. But anyway, all right, cool. So he got the green light for this movie, gets the budget, he has all his people, all that's great, right? Now you got to find people to actually be in this movie. So then there were casting searches that were done in Austin, New York, and Los Angeles. According to an article I read, I think it was Mashable or it was something like that. Apparently Vince Vaughn was almost cast as the bully O'Banion, who ended up being Ben Affleck.
I think it was Benny.
I think it was Benny.
I said O'Banion, but I just saw something that said it was Benny.
Oh, well, either way. I mean, I think in this one it says that O'Banion, but either way, it would have worked for either one, I guess. He was in kind of the Vince Vaughn could have made sense.
I guess they would have looked different. Benny had the red hair.
Yeah.
And
As Linklater put it, apparently, Benny was smart and full of life, and you don't cast the unappealing person, you cast the appealing person. So I don't know if that's a backhanded compliment to Vince Vaughn. Who knows? Other people who were in consideration were Elizabeth Berkley from Showgirls and Saved by the Bell. Mira Sorvino, our lovely Romy.
Wow.
Ron Livingston, who's an actor from the 90s, and he's been in other stuff. And Claire Danes. Claire Danes was apparently going to be Sabrina. And this was right around the time that she was about to be in My So-Called Life, which really kind of catapulted her. And according to IMDb trivia, which I don't always trust, but apparently Alicia Witt was also in the consideration for that role. I wouldn't have been surprised by her either, I guess. If you don't know Alicia Witt, she was in Dune when she was a kid and like Twin Peaks, a couple episodes. She was also Natalie from Urban Legend. And she's like a Hallmark Christmas lady now, so that's good for her. Casting director Don Phillips, who, do you know what other movie he cast?
No.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Makes sense.
He did that one. He said that they wanted Claire Danes for the girl, but she was too young. She couldn't leave school. Renee Zellweger has a non-speaking role in this movie, but was originally considered for Parker Posey's role, Darla, which went to Parker Posey. Parker was just crazier, which was great. And Wiley Wiggins apparently was the big find in Austin, and also Kristen Hinojosa, who also was local. And Linklater describes Wiley as a 15-year-old with all the bad habits of a grad student, smoking cigarettes, hanging out in coffee shops, my kind of guy. And here's a little something we have with this as well. So I did say a little earlier that most of the cast got on really well. You can tell in like the behind the scenes type footage that they have. It's all on YouTube. That, you know, they seem to have a good time on this movie. But that wasn't for everybody, though. And because this movie was very loose and very kind of all over the place a little bit, some roles were intended to be larger. They were reduced. So this comes from an article. It's like the 12 things you didn't know about, like, this movie, pretty much. Which is where the whole Ben Affleck, Vince Vaughn thing came from. There's actually also a whole article where it just talks about people, like, hooking up with one another, too, which I thought was fun. But anyway, the Kevin Pickford role, which was played by Shawn Andrews, was intended to be a bigger role. But because of his behavior with other members of the team, his screen time was cut down in favor of Matthew McConaughey's role, Wooderson. And Linklater recalls that there was another actor, Shawn Andrews, who was the opposite of McConaughey. He wasn't really getting along with everybody. I could tell that the actors weren't really responding to him. Linklater apparently had to break up a fight between Andrews and Jason London at one point, and they barely spoke to each other on set. And then because of that, Milla Jovovich, who had been in like The Return to the Blue Lagoon, she'd been a child model, like teen model, her stuff also kind of it didn't really work out, honestly. And it also kind of had something to do with something we'll also talk about in a minute. But yeah, her role wasn't really that big either. And that's kind of awkward, y'all, because when you think about this movie, yeah, in the beginning, you see it's Pink, Pickford and Michelle and all them and whatever. And then like throughout the movie, you're just like, oh, he's not really in this a whole lot anymore. And you then find out what that is. And you have to think that's so awkward because like they're supposed to be playing friends and you're about to like fight this guy because, you know, whatever. Shawn Andrews, if you're listening, I hope you're a better person now, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's kind of cool for Matthew McConaughey. He was not originally cast in the movie. You know, he wasn't supposed to really be a big thing. I think even Anthony Rapp in that little documentary, he said, like, there wasn't much on the page for him. And he was just, like, a film student at the University of Texas in Austin. He went out drinking one night. He ended up going to this hotel bar, because his friend worked there, apparently. And he approached this casting director who was there. They said, oh, you see that guy down there? Like, he's a casting director. He cast Sean Penn in Fast Times, which I will personally say right here, right now, I think that Wooderson's character, very similar to something like Sean Penn a little bit, I would definitely say, in that movie. I agree, yeah. And Matthew goes, I'm going to go down and talk to this guy. And then Don Phillips just recalls that Linklater didn't really like McConaughey at first because he was, quote, too handsome. Which I guess, yeah, but then they were able to ugly him up a little bit. Because Wooderson is not supposed to be this, like, super handsome guy. Not much. He has that face. Listen. And much of the Wooderson role was improvised or written on the spot, giving McConaughey more screen time. So, yeah, I just think it's really interesting. And it kind of goes for, like, what Richard Linklater wanted to do with the movie. Because I think he wanted to keep it very, very loose, very improv-y. Have you seen the cast character interviews that they did with some of these things? No. All right, so if you have not, I think you should if you're a fan of this movie. There are character interviews that they do with these people in these roles. And what they do is that they talk as if they're their characters pretty much. And so, for example, like, they ask, like, what does Jody like? What does Jody hate? What does this person like? What do they hate or whatever? And my favorite one, as we'll get into, is Darla. Because I love how Parker Posey just brings her to life. And, like, her little character interview is just her, like, outside her little truck that she has. She has, like, a cigarette in one hand, and she's just, like, talking just like how she does, like this, you know. She's talking about, she's just been through a lot. And, you know, like, I think first off, I think Parker Posey's a genius, personally. But, like, I love how she brought this character to life and gave her a bit of a backstory. It just shows that she was trained and she knew how to do that. But yeah, check out those character interviews if you haven't already. I think they might be on a DVD, or like if you have the Blu-ray of this, you might be able to find them that way. But they're on YouTube for free, and they're really interesting when you look at them, because you're just like, this was so open and improv in a way. There was like a script, obviously, but like, he was really open. Richard Linklater was really open to just like doing a bunch of other shit. So I thought it was really interesting. Anyway, Sarah, so do you have any, that's kind of my fun facts I have, but do you have any other fun facts that you can think of about this film?
No. Not that I can think of.
What about the one that was a little weird and awkward for the folks involved? So, as we stated before, so Shawn Andrews wasn't really the nicest of people on the set, apparently. And he also decided that, being a 22-year-old, he decided to go ahead and try to marry a 16-year-old Milla Jovovich.
Yes, I've known that for a while.
Which is crazy. So yeah, so in the one article that they talk about how people hooked up with each other or whatever, people definitely talked about, like, oh my god, like Shawn Andrews and Milla Jovovich, they just like were always making out, or like she was always laying on top of him, or like sitting on top of him, or whatever, blah blah blah, right? And so, being the adult in the situation, this young man decided to go and just like marry her. But fun fact, her mom was on set because she was a teenager. Yeah. And so she went and got that shit annulled, because she's like, you're not marrying my 16-year-old. Okay, you cannot do that. No. This is Texas, whatever. But like,
you know, the first time I shouldn't say the first time I watched it, but like, I knew in the movie that they dated, obviously it was very obvious that they were dating in the movie, but like, I didn't know I definitely watched it a few times before I realized and read that they had got married, like that they had got eloped. Or they went and eloped, and then they had it annulled. So then when you go back and rewatch it, you go, oh, okay, like... Yeah. But the first time I watched it, it wasn't like I knew all that when I watched it.
No, of course not. I also found out, apparently, I think I texted you this yesterday, I found out that apparently Marissa Ribisi, who is wonderful, she's actually my favorite character in this movie, I love her. She's a Scientologist, unfortunately, which is kind of crazy. Her and her brother both are, Giovanni Ribisi. Apparently, she was dating Jason Lee from My Name is Earl fame, and they, I guess, dated for a while. Yeah. And apparently, he was like on set because he came there.
I wonder why they didn't put him in the movie.
I don't know.
Maybe even as a background character, or just like one of those characters that may have just like said something.
It would have made sense.
A line, you know.
It would have made sense.
It would have worked.
It would have made sense because Joey Lauren Adams, she ended up being, I don't know, I'd never watched Kevin Smith movies, so I don't care. But I know she was a Kevin Smith person. So she might have been Amy from Chasing Amy.
I think she was.
I think she was too. So
I never watched that movie.
I didn't either. Sorry.
I do know that in that interview, that documentary that we were speaking about earlier, that they were talking about kind of how everybody came to it and like, what happened afterwards. Yeah. And Ben Affleck was like, I did Go Bill Hunting after this, which we all know he won an Oscar for with his best friend, Matt Damon. And we all know who these people are. I mean, but this movie really broke out a lot of people, which is crazy when you think about it. Like, Ben Affleck, like, you know...
Renee Zellweger, technically.
He's had his time, but, you know, this was a very, like, one of his first movies.
Yeah.
And then he did and won an Oscar after this. Like,
right.
It's kind of crazy to look back at this movie and then go and do that, which I've never watched Go Will Hunting, which I've wanted to, I just have never done it.
Yeah.
And then it said he did Chasing Amy, which when you put two and two together...
True, right.
Joey Lauren Adams and Ben Affleck are in that movie together. And then Cole Hauser is another one that was kind of like, I feel like it was kind of like, he was quiet for a while. I don't want to say quiet. He didn't do much, but if anybody watches Yellowstone, I do not watch Yellowstone. My mom watches it.
Yes, she does.
But he is in that, and he looks completely different.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's cool.
So
I know Cole Hauser.
His name is Rip.
Okay, yeah.
So I know Kevin Costner's in that show.
Yeah.
Other people and Cole Hauser, but I'm like, that name sounds familiar.
I know, and you're like, oh shit, it's Betty.
And then I'm like, that's Betty. And when you put like his red curly hair in Dazed and Confused, and he's got this like dark hair, this big beard, he looks completely different. He's more husky looking.
Yeah,
he's
older.
He's older, and he's just got, but he looks good. But I'm like, whoa, I would not have guessed that was him.
It's crazy. And then, like,
so if anybody likes that show, then you'll know that.
I'm horrible because I get that and Fargo.
40-some years later.
I get that and Fargo mixed up. So
what?
Yellowstone and Fargo. I get
Fargo's a movie.
It's a TV show.
And also a TV show too.
With Kirsten Dunst and her husband. Damn it.
You're right.
Anyway.
Oh, sorry.
But I do get them a little bit confused. But anyway, you're totally right. I mean, like, Ben Affleck's in this movie. Fucking Parker Posey before she did anything really big, and like...
Anthony Rapp, like,
before he was on Rent and shit like that. And before he was the only one. I love him. And he exposed Kevin Spacey for the fuck that he is. Good for you, Anthony Rapp. I love you. Did you also know he was in Adventures in Babysitting?
Anthony Rapp?
Yeah.
No.
He's in that with Elizabeth Shue. But anyway, so... but yeah, so many different people.
Of any other people that have like kind of like blew up.
Oh my god! I mean, like Renee Zellweger, like you said,
obviously Matthew McConaughey
and Matthew McConaughey.
I mean, also
this is right before he did A Time to Kill.
He had mentioned that in the like I said, this interview type documentary thing kind of went after too, and he did A Time to Kill, which is also a completely different movie from Dazed and Confused. It's a very good movie if anybody's ever watched it.
Very dramatic.
It's got Kiefer Sutherland. It's got Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
It's got Sandra Bullock.
It's like a Southern crime type thing going on.
Yeah, it's really good. I watched it a couple years back, and it's just... Oh, I think Ashley Judd's in it. I think she's his girlfriend or wife. Yeah, it definitely makes you think. Especially the ending. If you ever were to watch the movie and get to the ending, it's kind of one of those things like... kind of makes you think. But anyway, it's a really good movie, and he did this, I believe, afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's kind of crazy to like look at him in Wooderson, and then he plays a lawyer in this other movie, and he's completely different.
Plus, also somebody who literally is.
But this was like literally right after.
Yeah.
It.
Also, somebody who was like not really a trained actor like that. He went to film school, kind of, sort of.
But then he went to go and do a lot of rom-coms.
The Dallas Buyers Club.
Dallas Buyers Club. He did How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Yeah,
I like that movie. He
apparently has a production company called Keep Livin' or something like that.
Just Keep Livin' or something.
Just Keep Livin'. Yeah. It's a whole thing.
So he definitely skyrocketed after this movie. So it's just so funny when you're watching the credits. Like I was watching the credits at the end yesterday, and it was like saying all these people's names. It was like Matthew McConaughey, Ben Affleck, and it's like that's crazy.
Adam Goldberg. Oh, you have your little fun fact about that too.
Adam Goldberg. So Adam Goldberg in this movie also played How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days years later.
He's been in plenty of movies.
With Matthew McConaughey. Funny enough, they kind of, in a sense, kind of reunited after we did Dazed and Confused. But if you are another shout out to a show that I actually do watch. I don't watch Yellowstone, but I do watch the Goldbergs. Mm-hmm. Based on the life of another Adam Goldberg.
Yes.
His... growing up in a Jewish family.
Growing up in the 80s, all that stuff.
In the 80s, and... you're like, why?
Wendy McLevin-Covey.
Yeah, but when I heard Adam Goldberg, I'm like, that's the guy from Dazed and Confused, and I was like, is that the same guy? And it's not. But of course, I had to like Google it back then, and it was not right. But funny enough, they actually did go to the same school, and there is actually like a portrayal, once or twice, 3 times at most, in the show about the other Adam Goldberg,
which is so funny.
Which is him.
Which is that guy.
Which is the Adam Goldberg. Adam Goldberg's is more behind the scenes.
Yeah, he's a writer, he's a director, all that stuff.
And you obviously see that, and if you've ever watched the show, you know that he likes doing videos and doing things of that nature, and he's more behind the scenes. But I would have not guessed that him and the other Adam Goldberg went to school together, and it's really funny that their name is exactly the same.
I know.
Like, that was probably very.
And they both end up being like in Hollywood and stuff like that. It's
in
crazy.
a sense. The one guy more in front of the screen,
right?
So that was kind of that was a fun fact that I found out years.
I thought that's so funny. I love that. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, but so many different people, and it is very much that movie that is like isn't that, or wait, hold on, isn't that? But then I also thought one of the interesting things too was like, in the little documentary we watched, like Richard Linklater did have like, he really liked his cast and he did all that. And he was actually very protective of them, wanting to be okay. But especially for the young actors in this, especially Wiley Wiggins and Kristen Hinojosa, because they were just local hires. And I thought it was
they were
really...
like, what, 15, 16?
So young. I think he was 16, and then like I think she was around the same age. And he wanted to make
They're
sure...
probably the only teenagers.
Yes, and and then the other extras or whatever. But like, but he was like, I wanted to make sure I don't like fuck their lives up or whatever. And I thought that was very nice of him to do. And honestly, like, I think both of them are really awesome people. Wiley Wiggins, I don't really know what he does now.
I think they were good for the parts that they played.
Absolutely. And I think they just seem like really cool people.
And if that's the only credit they ever did, then, that's kind of cool to say, hey,
I was in this.
This classic
movie that I was in.
Classic, teen
film. It's crazy.
Time period. No, I don't want to say time.
It's a period piece to me.
It's a period piece, in a sense. The 70s, like, so many people were in this movie. Like, yes, I act alongside Ben Affleck, Matthew McConaughey. Who can say that? And yeah, they might not have made it in Hollywood, but like it's pretty cool to think back that
these two
there's
people.
iconic scenes and things, and you were part of it. You were part of all that, and that your character.
Yeah, I think Wiley Wiggins said it really cool because like he still lives in Texas. I think. Shout out Wiley Wiggins if you listen. But anyway, I just think it's really really cool because. He even said, he was like, I went out to LA, I tried to make it happen, I tried doing it, because Nicky Katt, who plays Clint in this movie, he said, oh, you should move to LA, blah, blah, blah. He said he didn't work the whole time he was in LA. He lived on some, like, shitty part of Hollywood, and then he was working in Encino, which I don't think is close, I think it's the Valley, and he was just, he was doing titles for HBO softcore porn.
Yeah, that's what he said, yeah.
And then he just moved back to Texas and he like... He
was just like, I'm just going to go do my thing.
Yeah, and I don't even know what it is. And then Kristen Hinojosa, she said she did the same thing. She said, I went out and tried to do it, and you have to play the game when you're in Hollywood, and you kind of have to, unfortunately. And so...
And I'm not going to lie, I feel like it would be a lot harder for a woman to go out there and do it,
completely, too. Oh, yeah. And so there's that. And then also, I loved her candor.
Especially all the stuff that, we've found out over the years.
Oh, the Me Too and everything, yeah.
So we don't know what could have happened if she would have...
Completely.
It's... you do you, boo.
I mean, gorgeous, of course, but it's so...
But, like, maybe it's a good thing that things that... Not saying that things that happen to other people is, that's unfortunate, but, maybe this was just her, they roll into town, make a movie.
Right. That's what you got it.
She had a couple, I guess you probably put all of her scenes in the movie. I mean, she's always probably in there for like 10 minutes.
Right.
Really,
she's a major part of it just because, like, she's Anthony Rapslov's interest.
There's definitely times where she's not talking, like,
of course.
When they're in the car wash and, whatever.
Totally.
She's got a couple lines, but it's not like major, like the other people's lines. But
maybe that was her
thing.
Maybe it
was just like they were just meant to roll into town and get into this movie, and then that was it.
I loved her candor in this documentary.
So that happens.
I loved her candor in this documentary because she was like, there's people who definitely have come up to her being like, have you ever seen the movie Dazed and Confused? You look just like the girl.
Yeah.
She's probably like, yeah, I am the girl.
Yeah.
But I loved her candor because she said, yeah, I went out and tried to do it and blah, blah, blah. And she just said, I honestly just wasn't really that good enough, which I appreciate that as a person who wants to be an actor. You go out there and you're like, maybe I'm just not that good of an actress. Like... And maybe I should do something else. And then in this documentary, it was probably done in 2004 or something like that. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. But like, she did more like war advocacy type work, and that's where she found her kind of passion.
Yeah.
I also thought it was funny in that documentary. They all talked about the different things they were doing, and Ben Affleck was in this little documentary, as you were stating, and he said, "I got engaged briefly."
And we all know who that was.
Yeah, who he's now married to again.
And now he just recently got back with J-Lo and
so
got
funny.
married.
I love how he's just like, I got engaged briefly. I'm like, yeah, you did. Because you
cool.
also were with Jennifer Garner for millions of years.
And had kids
with her and everything. But, you know.
What a time.
Who's Jennifer Garner married to now?
No one.
Good for her. I love you. I love you, Jennifer Garner. Jennifer Garner's Stan account. I love her so much.
I think she was dating somebody, but nobody of, actor status.
I don't know if I want to do 13 going on 30. I'm not sure yet. But we might.
Oh.
Who knows?
That could be fun.
It could be fun. It's a good one. But yeah, no, that's pretty much
Jennifer Garner.
I love Jennifer Garner. She's so good. Like, just in general, that movie's hilarious. Her in, okay, I'm going to have Jennifer Garner moment for just a little bit. She's great in 13 going on 30. And then also, so good in Juno. So good in Juno. Oh my God. Like, when she goes and, like, she's talking to the baby at the mall at Juno's belly or whatever. And it's so good. Oh my God, I love that movie. Anyway, so yeah, those are kind of our fun facts. Again, it seemed like a pretty, which is great and wonderful. And do you know some of the other things that he did in terms of this, like Richard Linklater, like what he ended up kind of doing after this?
He did another movie and it was not good.
Yes, we talked about that one. Everyone Wants Some.
Sorry.
Ugh. Gross. But anyway, sorry, Richard Linklater.
Well, here's my thought, is that when I watched it, I meant to watch it. It came out years ago, and I meant to watch it, and just never did. Or I didn't have the streaming, whatever. And I watched it somewhere on Roku. I can't remember. It was like a year and a half ago I watched it, and it was kind of just one of those things I put on, and I was like doing other stuff, but I was paying attention to it. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I've wanted to watch this, we do it. And I think I just kept comparing it to Dazed and Confused so much that I was just like, it's not stacking up for me, and I was like, nah. I was like, this isn't, nah.
It's also like super boring, and it's also I haven't even seen it. I think it's like
the 80s version.
Yeah, I haven't even seen it, but like apparently it's boring. We had an 80s version.
We had Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Exactly. Oh, we'll get to that. But anyway, so he also ended up doing School of Rock. He directed that with Miranda Cosgrove.
Oh, Jack Black. Wow.
Yeah. So then got turned into a musical.
I've never seen that, but I wanted to.
Yeah, it's fun. Bad News Bears, he did the remake of that, which is kind of fun, with the baseball team. Oh. And he also did Boyhood, which is the movie that people know of because it was shot over a period of 12 years.
I kind of wanted to watch that before, and I haven't watched it, and I found a fun fact. Well, not a fun fact, but I didn't realize that he did this until you just said it now, but apparently the one guy that's in this movie that sells the guy the beer with the glasses, apparently he's in Boyhood.
Yes, he is. Apparently, yeah. I love that.
I'm sure he's about 20 years older, but yes. I didn't know that. Yeah. But now it makes sense that he did that.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like a little cameos being in that movie and then
also, yeah, so there's that. We also have the fun school ties type of thing. I think you said it was in the documentary. It was not, I don't think. Oh. But if you've ever watched the movie School Ties, it's on HBO right now if you want to go watch it. You can see Brendan Fraser's butt, which is really fun. But you also see it in Gods and Monsters kind of too. But anyway, School Ties, if you don't know, is about Brendan Fraser being a Jewish boy in the 50s and going to a school. Oh. And so he's like on scholarship or whatever because he's a football player. And so then he meets these other boys, one of whom is Ben Affleck's BFF, Matt Damon, who's in this movie or in the School Ties. But then you have Anthony Rapp, Cole Hauser, and Ben Affleck are all in School Ties.
Wow.
Which is hilarious. Right before they were in this movie together. Because that was 92 and this is 93. So they probably shot School Ties. Yeah. So it's like really funny. And I was just like, okay, that's really fun. But yeah, go watch School Ties. It's not overtly homoerotic, but there's a fight scene in a shower. It's kind of homoerotic. I think it's fun. Yeah, what else is there? And then, of course, the comparisons. I think this movie has a certain legacy, like we were talking about earlier. It's very much a movie that you can watch when you're a teenager. You should definitely watch when you're a teenager, because when you're older, you still enjoy it, I think, but, like, you're just like, okay, this is not at all what high school is, kind of a thing, but, who knows. But it's had that certain legacy to it. I also think that there are comparisons to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is kind of fun. Yeah, no, Fast Times is just so good, and it's no surprise that, that was from Amy Heckerling, and she did Clueless and everything. Yeah. And another little bit of fun facts we kind of have a little bit, I think, obviously this was done in Texas, all pretty much Austin, Texas, I believe. I only believe so much of the fun fact, but I believe you said earlier, what was the one about the music of this film?
1/6 of the budget was spent on acquiring the rights to 1970s pop hits on the soundtrack. So as we know, this movie has Aerosmith. It has, I think it has Kiss.
It does.
It has Kiss. It has Foghat.
Uh-huh.
It has
so much.
Peter Frampton.
The Runaways.
It has The Runaways. It has what's the
Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper of the fun fact, I did see Alice Cooper a couple years ago in concert.
Love that.
He was with Motley Crue, and he was like one of the opening acts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of funny seeing a guy that is, oh god, he's probably in his 80s now.
70s.
70s. So I seen about 5 years ago, and so it was pretty cool to see him.
Yeah.
I actually could say I seen him in concert.
Leonard Skinner was in this. They were on this thing.
Oh,
Black
yeah,
Sabbath. Yeah. So it does not surprise me that a fair amount of the budget.
I heard Ozzy, but I was like, it was probably Black Sabbath. You're right.
I think it was Black Sabbath, yeah. But yeah, so it's no surprise that this movie has a whole lot
for sure, like
of that, and yeah, because the budget wasn't that big. It's almost $7 million. It's not that much.
But like, I think if you would have had all these songs in there, I just don't know. I guess it still would have been a pretty cool movie. I just don't know how.
I agree.
I just don't know. I think the music definitely helps make the.
Yeah, it makes the movie. I mean, the same thing with Fast Times at Ridgemont High, I think. Like, they have such good songs in there. The movie starts out with the Go-Go's. I mean, come on. Like, are you kidding me? Like, so good.
I just put two and two together. The artist or the band War?
Yeah, Lowrider.
And they did Why Can't We Be Friends, where they're doing the hazing, the girl hazing scene.
Yep.
I would have known that.
You're very right. Oh, yeah. JKL Productions is Matthew McConaughey's production, and it's the Just Keep Living.
Oh, and we have an iconic Love Hurts. That's a good song.
When they're at the dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun one. Oh, little fun fact. So Matthew McConaughey is supposed to be the older guy in this movie, and he's like hanging out with the young kids or whatever. But did you know he was actually younger than some of these people, though?
That's what I
So he was younger than Sasha Jensen, Joey Lauren Adams, and Parker Posey. Huh. But he's playing like the 22-year-old.
Yeah,
or whatever.
The one that's out of school and working.
Yeah, so exactly. He's working for the city. Apparently also, so back in 2004, there were apparently people that Richard Linklater knew back in the day who all have the same last names as some of these characters. So apparently it was Bobby Wooderson, Andy Slater, Richard Floyd. These were classmates of his. They tried suing Universal Studios saying that they didn't get the permission to use their likeness or surnames or whatever, and they still all live in Texas and whatever. But, the statute of limitations had expired or whatever. So, yeah, Richard Linklater, you couldn't do that. Oops. But, it is what it is. Oh, did you know that the Top Notch Burger that they go to, which those burgers kind of sound kind of good, actually.
Right. I was thinking about that.
Did you know that is actually also, a couple months ago, teen movies are kind of my shit a little bit. And I was watching Varsity Blues because it was on Starz or streaming somewhere. And I was like, oh shit, like this looks really familiar for a place that they go to get food. And it was Top Notch Burger. And so that was also in Varsity Blues as well. Which is not a great movie necessarily, but
I read that in the trivia, and I also read that it closed down.
It did close down, and I think it closed. And
then it opened back up.
Yeah,
I was like, and apparently they have the paddles at the top of that,
which is so funny. I think that's very apropos.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, have you ever heard of Johnny's Broiler in Los Angeles, California? Johnny's Broiler is like a little diner that they have. I think it's still around. It closed for renovations, but any of my California listeners, y'all can tell me about it. I guess Los Angeles people, but Johnny's Broiler is in Los Angeles. It was the place where they take Liz and Jawbreaker to, they find that she's dead there. And then they go back there to try to find the photo or whatever. Oh. But also, do you know what movie else it's in? It's also in Can't Hardly Wait. That's where Preston goes and he meets Jenna Elfman. She goes there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it's also in Reality Bites. It's where they go. Have you ever seen Reality Bites? It's where Janine Garofalo and Winona Ryder go. They go to... where do they go? They go to get diner food or whatever.
Gotcha.
Also, Renee Zellweger's in that movie too. She plays somebody with Ethan Hawke. Yeah. So I'm trying to think what else there is, if there's anything fun that we can talk about. Rory Cochrane wore a wig, of course, because why wouldn't he? I think Adam Goldberg also wore a wig too, because you saw it in the documentary. He put on a wig or whatever. So that makes sense, because I do kind of want some of their hairstyles a little bit, but I understand that, some of that was not. Apparently, this is also one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies, apparently. I think there was that, and then this is like the film debut for a couple people. So it was like Joey Lauren Adams, I think it was her first movie, or one of her first. It was Marissa Ribisi's first movie, I think. So yeah, but anyway, without further ado, I guess let's move into our plot summary of Dazed and Confused. So we begin our film with an opening title sequence where it talks like, the Gramercy Pictures presents. It's just like a black screen. But in the meantime, we're also hearing the beginning of this song by Aerosmith, Sweet Emotion. We then see this car, this orange pumpkin colored muscle car, driving around a parking lot, and we get introduced to Kevin Pickford, kind of, and Michelle Burrows. Kevin Pickford's played by Sean Andrews, and Mila Jovovich is playing Michelle, and they're rolling a joint, as you do in the 70s. Yeah. And so then you just get kind of interspersed with different people, like different extras.
It kind of does that, and it kind of starts not so much introducing the other characters, but they just show the different cliques and what they're doing. Like, they show them because they're like the stoners. Then you get to the jocks.
You do see them. You also see the stoner, where you see Slater, played by Rory Cochrane. Yeah, you see the jocks a little bit. You see the popular girls, I guess. The geeks. And you just kind of get these different, like...
That's kind of how they just kind of show what they're doing.
Yeah. No dialogue yet, none of that, but it's just playing Sweet Emotion, and you're just getting a feel for these different characters and just kind of what it looks like, I guess. And then you get these different, like, the school. Then we have this little, like, title sequence, but it's like a little thing where it says last day of school, May 28th, 1976, at the time or whatever. It's Lee High School, which is in Texas. We are to assume, I guess. You then have our actual bit of dialogue we have, where it's Randall Pink Floyd, played by Jason London of the London Brothers. He is with his girlfriend Simone, played by Joey Lauren Adams, and she says, "I'm going this way. And have we decided what we're going to do for tonight? Oh, I'm probably just going to get hung up with the guys." And she's just like really chill, and she's just like, "Okay, whatever." So
she really sounds like that.
She really does sound like that, and I love her for it. But yeah. So then you see Pink is going with his friends, Pickford and Michelle. They're just like walking, and then they're walking into the school, and they get introduced to Slater, played by Rory Cochrane again. When he's just like looking up at something. I don't even know if he's getting a drink of water or whatever. I think he was. But somebody has also like made the president or whatever. They've like drawn on him, and he has like
the red eyes
and like whatever. It's really funny. And so they get introduced to him, and we find out that apparently it's supposed to be a party. It's going to be 9:30, man. 9:30. Okay, I'll be there, man. And so then before Slater leaves, he's like, "I got to stop by on a little bit of business, if you know what I mean." And like, "Yeah, I know what you mean, man. That's what I'm talking about, man." And he just says, "I'm fucking wasted." He just like goes away, which is really funny. So then you have, I believe, the next scene is again, Pink is walking down the hall with Michelle and Kevin. And so he then goes to his actual class he has to go to, where we are then introduced to his other friend group, I guess, who is Mike Newhouse and Tony Olson, and we have Cynthia Dunn, all played by Adam Goldberg, Anthony Rapp, and Marissa Ribisi. So you get the idea that Pink is just kind of like a chameleon. Like, he is a jock, kind of. He's also sort of a stoner, but he also plays poker with these geeky people, apparently. Apparently one of their friends is out of town, so they're not going to play poker tonight, but I'll probably get just wrapped up at this party and be like, "Oh, maybe we should go to that." And be like, "Oh, well, all right. Yeah, totally." Yeah. So we get introduced, and we kind of see that, like, Tony is sort of, like, apprehensive. He's like, "I always feel, like, weird at those things." Be like, oh no, we're gonna do it. Like, let's do it. Because you find that I guess Cynthia has her own car. They're like, y'all all kind of get together, whatever. But you could just tell that they're a little bit different. They're my favorite personally. I like them a lot actually. So yeah, and then we get the Mike and Anthony talking about. I'll call him Anthony too because it's his real name, but his name's Tony, so it really is that. Tony's talking about a dream that he had, which he says he's swearing Mike to secrecy or whatever. He says, so I'm there and I'm getting it on with like the perfect female figure. And then he's like, well, you can't just like stop right there. Yeah, it seems pretty good, like a perfect female figure. But with the head of Abraham Lincoln, like the hat and the beard, and he's just like, oh, well, guess I won't really think too much on that, or whatever. I gotta go do this thing. I'll be right back. And then all that Mike can say is just like, I'm sorry, Yeah. Which is funny because in real life, Anthony Rapp is like queer, and I think apparently him and Parker Posey had a little thing going on the set, which is kind of fun. But it's just funny because like this is the 70s, so it wasn't exactly in vogue to be queer or anything like that. But I just think that's really funny because then I'm like,
there definitely wasn't any display of that in this movie at all.
Not at all. And that's the only thing you kind of get where you're like, well, that's kind of weird. But then it's interesting because like the character themselves, like the actor is a queer person. He has a husband now and all that shit and whatever. But I just was like, okay, whatever. But there is no display of that because there wasn't going to be. It's fucking Texas. Like, whatever.
You got that about Texas.
No offense to Texas, but I'm just saying.
It's like, but I wonder, because they don't display that in this movie, but I'm sure obviously there was queer and gay people in school. So it's like, I wonder if they felt like they could be open or if they kind of felt like they had to hide it too. Like, how many stories have you heard people saying they acted like
that they had to hide?
They had to hide, or they dated people in high school.
Yeah,
they were a man. They dated girls in high school. Well, you dated girls in high school.
Yeah.
So it's like I really wonder if like they did that, and then maybe in the 80s or 90s, they kind of came out and felt okay to come out. Whereas maybe in the 70s they kind of felt
totally.
I wonder just because like it's definitely not displayed in here.
Yeah.
But because, hell, people in the 50s were...
Oh, yeah.
All the little movies and shows you watch where people were secretly getting together that were queer and, they'd be broken up by the police. That's horrible. That's a whole other discussion you would do. But, but it's just like, I wonder, I feel like they probably were a certain way or they had to put on an act or a facade. And then later in their years, maybe in their late 20s, early 30s, they were like, what, I think I'm good to, like, come out now.
Because even when we think about it, we're kind of going off a tangent, but I think it's fine. It's like... Yeah, in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, there's no, like, queer character, really.
Not that I can think of, no.
Not that I can think of, and there's not really any even sort of, like, there's no real, like, reference to it. You really only have that in so many of those teen movies, and then you have something like Clueless that has a character. We don't find out he's gay until, like, halfway through.
And let me tell you that, when we actually do dive into that movie at some point in time, which we will do on the podcast, because...
Of course we will.
And we will both doing it because it's iconic and I love that movie so much. But it's like, I'm not going to lie to you. I watched that when I was younger, and I don't think that one was too bad. I think Cruel Intentions I should have been a little older to watch.
Right.
But Clueless is, again...
That's PG-13, so yeah.
PG-13, and Clueless is definitely another no-brainer. Like, you don't have to think about this movie.
Yeah.
Really. It's just fun, silly, It's just a fun movie.
But it talks, but it's interesting,
I didn't know with Christian. Like, I did not know. Like, watching the first couple times, like, I didn't put two and two together.
Right.
That he was gay. Like, that he liked boys. Like,
right.
I did not understand that. I was just like, oh, like, whatever. She ends up liking her stepbrother or old... I don't even know what
whatever he is.
Paul Rudd in all his glory. But, like, it's one of those you definitely go back to. And I will definitely cover this when we do this. But I definitely didn't know. And then, obviously, watching it as a teen and, like, young adult, I'm like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure there's plenty of people that thought about that.
And it's
some
crazy.
Some people want to do right off the bat. But,
it's crazy, too, because then also it's like, it is this kind of, like,
and, of course,
fantasy.
Murray's like...
Yeah.
He's like, oh,
yeah, I have this.
You didn't know?
those? And that was also just kind of a fantasy world because that's not really how I think, like, Beverly Hills really is, like. But it's interesting that, like, they had, like, the wealthy black people, you know what I mean? And they showed that off. And, it was this white girl we're covering, but then she has, like, a black friend. And then her black friend has a boyfriend. And then there's other wealthy black people here, too. Then you have, like, the girl who's, like, out of town, who's, like, the new girl. And then you have this character who you don't know is gay until like halfway through, and you're like, oh, okay.
And another thing I think with this movie, Dazed and Confused, you only literally have the one person of color that's in the friend group.
Yeah,
and I feel
he
like
doesn't get anything hardly.
Barely. A couple lines, and I feel like they could have.
Yeah.
And I could be maybe the time, Texas, maybe.
Sure.
Maybe they just. That wasn't very popular.
Or he wasn't thinking about that when he was making the
but
movie.
I just wonder, it's like, I wonder if that's something that would have more of a...
Yeah.
You know, was it like that because there wasn't that many...
people of color, or... right.
in that state, like, or not, or... You know, it's just kind of like that one...
Or that wasn't Richard Linklater's. Right. Or was it the token guy of like, oh, if this is Richard Linklater's kind of autobiography a little bit, of like, did he only have like that one friend of color or whatever? Maybe he didn't have a whole lot of gay friends. I didn't really see it
too much in this, like when they showed like the sides of it. Not the sides, but I mean, I think the only other person is the teacher, like a junior high teacher, who was like...
Which I love. Men!
Yeah. It's funny.
But yeah,
I wonder, maybe as far as extras go, I didn't really feel like I saw that. So.
I agree. Yeah, we're getting off into a whole thing, but I like it though because we can have these conversations. Anyway, back to the movie, I guess.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Anyway, they go to class or whatever, and so then there's something that happens after Anthony Rapp says that, where it might be that they're listing off the Gilligan's Island episodes or whatever. Yeah. But I think before that, actually, it's you get to see Don Dawson, played by Sasha Jensen, and he goes, and I think he's at the wood shop, because you see Slater's in there. He's like teaching a guy how to like make a bong or whatever.
Fun fact about the wood shop, before you get into it, I was watching this yesterday. I probably noticed this before. It's just one of those things where you watch, and I've watched it so many times that I kind of just probably watched it and was like, ha ha ha. And I realized it when I was watching it. I thought it would be a fun fact that in the workshop or wood shop, whatever the hell they call
Same
it,
thing.
Technology. I don't know. I think when I was in high school, it was like tech class or whatever.
Yeah, tech education or whatever.
Although I did nothing. I literally just did nothing. And
I didn't either.
But anyway, what I thought was funny in the workshop is the guys on the machine doing something with the paddle, because the paddles come into play in the movie, because they haze the guys.
Younger freshmen, yeah.
The girls, but the guys haze guys, girls haze girls. And he's like doing something with his paddle, like putting holes in it or whatever it is. And it says, please wear your goggles or something. And it's like on the machine that he's like messing with, and then you see his goggles on the top of his head, so he should be having them down on his eyes to protect his eyes, and I just thought that was really funny. Yeah,
I think that's funny too. And that guy is Benny, played by Cole Hauser, our Yellowstone school ties dude.
I just remembered the other thing I was going to say about with our mom, with being a teenager in the 70s. I just remember this. She told me that I think junior high was another year.
Yeah.
So like high school was sophomore, so 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Yeah.
Because I was like trying to look for yearbooks.
Depends on where you're
and I couldn't do it, and then she was telling me that apparently junior year was into 9th grade.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because junior high also could include that.
Yeah, and I guess things change over the years.
And then also regionally like too. That. Yeah, no, but I think we can. People can relate, because they're just like, high school's weird, dude, and like, why do we have to do all this stuff? Right. Granted, love teachers; they're great, wonderful. Sometimes you're just like, oh my god, like,
I just wish there would have been more options,
crazy,
like for that stuff, like why you would have had to take that class.
Why we had to do like what we called a career cluster, meaning like you would have to take your basic classes, but then you had to have a career cluster, meaning you had to choose this path to go down. So for example, it was like performing arts for me, so you could do band, chorus, or orchestra.
I don't even know if I had one, honestly.
Or dance or something like that. Or you could do literary arts, where you could like be on the newspaper or do creative writing or something. Or you could do like home ec, where you could like do foods, which was like the food class. And then you could do working with children, where you could like work with the children, and like they had a little daycare thing set up, kind of, sort of. But anyway, it was just weird, because I was like,
I really don't feel like I was in any career cluster.
Yeah, it was. Mine was performing arts, because you had to choose it. And I was like, well, I guess I'll do chorus all 4 years, whatever, which was fine. But I was just like, am I a singer now? No, bitch. Like, what do you mean?
Maybe I did. I don't remember. Whatever.
I don't know. Who knows?
I had to look at my transcript.
Exactly. But anyway, so we have that little thing where he's making his little paddle and all that. Then we go back to this class, which I guess is history class or something. I don't actually know. We see that, we have the girls. We have Jodie, played by Michelle Burke. We got Siobhan, played by Dina Martin, I believe. And then we have Kay, who's played by Christine Harnos, I believe.
Other fun fact, she was in ER.
Oh, the Christine Harnos lady?
She was. She played, if you ER is a drama TV show
with
set.
George
I think
Clooney.
it actually started in '94.
I think it did too.
I literally think that it started the year after this movie came out, and she plays one of the doctors, like one of the main characters who's a doctor.
I love that.
Plays his wife. She, I think, like plays like a lawyer, or she's going to be a lawyer. It's a whole thing.
Children, if you're listening to this, ER was like today's Grey's Anatomy.
Exactamungo. And it had a lot of seasons. Actually, Grey's Anatomy has surpassed this, but I actually watched it over like quarantine. I watched it in 2020, and it was good. But I thought, God, I was like, she looks so familiar. Who is that? And I was like, I'm one of the minor characters, Dazed and Confused. And I looked it up, and I was right.
Yeah. Also, Dina Martin, I think, is she's not really an actress anymore. Apparently, I looked her up, and she actually worked at Buffalo Wild Wings for a long, long time, apparently. And she moved. She worked there for a long time, and now she apparently is a like Christian lady, and she has like a little ministry with her husband in Delaware, apparently, which is near us. So that's kind of cool. So
interesting.
I'd be like, bitch, that's really cool. And then you have like the geeks or whatever, and but the big thing was also is that you see Jason London, you see Pink is in the class, and Don has come over and he gives him something. Don gives Pink this pledge sheet pretty much. And
for
so the pledge sheet is because the football coaches have decided that you can't do these things now, and we have to like try to suppress it, so we're having you sign this pledge pretty much, which is kind of a throughout thing.
Right.
And so, of course, Pink is pissed about this, and he's just like, fuck this, blah, blah, blah. So then, again, they're back in the history class or whatever. I think we have some other stuff happen before this, but then we were back to the history class, because then they're trying to name off all of the Gilligan's Island episodes or whatever, which is kind of funny. But then there's the other scene after he's got. And
Jodie was like, the professor was sexy.
Yes, because they go to the bathroom too, which I love in that little thing in the background.
And I can understand that. Professor, I can remember.
Yeah, the professor from the Gilligan's Island, he was hot.
More so than the others.
I know, right? Although I thought Bob Denver, when he was Gilligan, was kind of cute. But anyway, just me. Anyway, so they go to the bathroom or whatever.
Professor was sexy.
Yeah, we're looking him up right now.
Anyway.
He was good. He's sexy. But anyway, I love...
like you have the Ginger and the Marianne.
Yeah, the overweight middle-aged guy, a nerdy scientific type. The professor's sexy. I love in that background, too, there's a little thing that says Jodie Kramer is stuck up. In the background,
I didn't notice that.
Where you see it, it's kind of funny. And that was actually supposed to be a little bit of a longer scene, but it ended up getting cut. This movie, when it first was originally done, was like 2 hours and 40 minutes. I could never. Oh my God. But
this podcast is supposed to be 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Whatever. Anyway, but they then come back to the classroom, and then I believe it's Pink who's like sharing this pledge, and they're all like, he's pissed about it. He's not happy about it.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to sign that.
I don't want to sign this, da-da-da-da. And then I like when Mike says something about like why they have to resort to neo-McCarthyism, and then Tony's just like, neo-McCarthyism, I like that. And it's like, okay, whatever, weirdo. But anyway, so then we get that kind of thing going on. Again, just kind of showing what's going on with these young people and everything. And so then...
it is the last day of school in 1976.
Yes. And
so they are waiting for that bell to ring.
Yes, they are.
Have the papers fly.
Yes. Yeah. And then we also have a part where we have the football coaches. So it's where because we get reiterated that like, so the one football coach is like the assistant coach, who apparently that guy is actually like an old NFL player or whatever. Not the main coach, but the
dark hair guy?
The dark hair guy
like
that they first talked to. Yeah.
Not like the old guy.
Where they're like, because
the older guy comes into play at the end of the movie.
Yes, he comes into play at the end of the movie. But the other guy that they first talked to, like, like, I don't want you getting lazy. I know you're sitting around the pool, chasing the muff around. Ugh. But anyway, so whatever. But that guy apparently is like an old NFL player, which is kind of funny because, anyway. But
my husband is a big NFL football.
I'm sure if we tell him who it is, he could tell us who it is.
I know, he definitely could. He would,
anyway, he would. Yeah. But anyway, but we get this reiteration that, like, okay, yeah, I know, right? But we get this reiteration that, like, the main coach, who I don't know who plays him, but it's the main coach, and he's the one who's sending out the pledge or whatever. He's like, Randall Floyd, you have to, don't think I haven't been noticing, and whatever, and talking about, like, that's how he talks.
I know.
But anyway,
it's just the way you do voices. It's so
really funny. He just
don't think I haven't been noticing.
Yeah, don't think I haven't been noticing.
You better sign that paper.
It really really is. That's pretty much what it was. And again, he's just like not into it.
And Randall's Pig's like, I'm fighting the man.
He's fighting the man or whatever. And then you also get a little bit too of like that. I think it was like, we'll get into it in a little bit later, but like it seems as if he wants to go against the grain, but then also his jock friends are like, why are you trying to like rock the boat? You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. But anyway. So then we have this kind of going on. So then you have the end of the school day when classes have finally ended.
And School's Out starts playing.
Perfect. I think even beforehand though, oh, wait a minute, because they go and drive over to the middle school.
Yeah.
You go drive over to the junior high, and we get introduced to the young men. Mitch, played by Wiley Wiggins, his friend Carl, Hirschfelder, all them. And so we get introduced to them because we find out that, and the other thing was that when Jody comes out of the bathroom, she asks for them to take it easy on Mitch.
Which is her little brother.
And whatever.
And of course they're like, oh no, we ain't taking
we're not taking easy on him at all. And then that gets into them going over to the junior high and whatever. And they have this announcement where Cole Hauser, Benny, he is like saying it. He's like, if you come out here and do this now, we'll only give you 5 licks or whatever. We'll only do whatever. And then they intimidate Mitch. They're like, Mitchy. We're looking for you, pal. I also love how, like, he's supposed to be from Texas, but he has, like, this weird, like, northeastern accent. We're looking for you, pal. I'm just like, okay, whatever, dude. Yeah. But anyway, so we have that, and then he's like, oh, shit, like, what are they going to do? We find out that he is a pitcher. Mitch is a pitcher on the baseball team, so he has to go to a game tonight, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then they go up to the teacher, who is
like, let's see if we can try and leave early.
Yeah, so and I love him.
Spare being being hit with the paddle.
Exactly.
By the senior. And
I love him because his, I think even like the teacher, you can assume he was a war veteran of some sort. He must have been like Vietnam or whatever.
He was like, my sergeant told me. He's like,
men.
He's like, 50 of you
are going in this mission, 25 of you ain't coming back. And it's like, I just love him, and so he's good. Great. They're just like,
he's like, that's my feelings on it.
And he's just like, okay, thanks then. But anyway, back to the end of school.
I'm dying now, thanks.
I guess I'm dying, I'm gonna get paddled, thanks.
So then you go and you see all these like little...
Yeah, like, so you see the high school, away. They're all like, throwing their papers up, everyone's leaving, everyone's getting their cars, and like they're going from the high school. Then you have the middle schoolers, they're all leaving too, all that good stuff. And then you see that some of the young freshman boys are being paddled. Some of them are, it's just starting really early, obviously. And so School's Out is playing and everything. And then we come up to... So we see how the guys are being dealt with. How the senior dudes who are paddling the young men. Then we see the girls and how they're doing it. Because we really don't know anything. Yeah. Although we know that, like... They were packing some stuff up in grocery bags or whatever, but we don't really know what they're going to do. This is where we find out what they're going to do because, as you know, as a woman, girls don't necessarily have to fight hard with their fists. They fight with their minds and manipulation and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So instead, the girls in this movie, when they're having to do all this, before they get to the hazing of the girls, they have to do this. It's when everyone's leaving, and they pack up the girls in the trucks, and they give them pacifiers to put in their mouths. Yeah. And this is when we then meet Sabrina Davis, played by Kristen Hinojosa. Jody notices her, and she's like, "Hey, you, come here." Be like, who are you? And she's like, I'm nobody. Like, I wasn't on the truck or whatever. And she's like, well, do you want to be whatever? She's trying to bring her in, and she's like, okay, cool, that's fine. So we have all this, and then again, I think you see some of the because one of the big things you see, again, this plot's very loose, y'all, because it kind of is. You see that the young men with Mitch and all them, they run to this car where one of their friends has it, but then you see there's this truck that comes around the corner,
is being driven by Benny,
exactly, and it comes back, and then you see all that, and then they're having to dart out, right? Yeah. So in the meantime, I think because I think this all happens. I think this actually happens. So then, all right, so they're driving, and they're trying to they're trying to outrun them.
They get to
Carl's house, and Carl and Mitch run up to the door, but they're caught by a Banyan, played by Ben Affleck, and he's about to do that, and then the mom of Carl takes her shotgun out.
She's like, get off my property.
Get off my property. You know, I don't think so, creep. And so he's just like...
O'Banion is
pissed. And Carl's just like, Mom. And so they go into the house or whatever, and he's like, all right.
He's
we're
like,
gonna
sorry,
meet each other.
And then they stick their heads out, and O'Banion sees them, and he's like, that's it. And he's
that's
like,
it, you little fucks.
I got you.
Right. So then you have all that. So that's kind of the end of this part with Mitch and his friends.
Yeah.
Then we move into the girls.
Yeah.
So the girls are being led kind of by Darla, I guess, played by Parker Posey. And so they're doing
She's
this...
definitely the HBIC.
Yes, obviously. And she is very much doing this air raid thing, which I'm assuming is from the 50s. I'm not from this time, so I don't know. And neither did our mom know, I think, either. So, but they're doing this air raid thing. If you don't already know, back when, you know, we thought Russia was going to bomb us, we had to do a little... I think there was an episode of Boy Meets World that had this. They kind of did it a little bit. But anyway, they have to like dive under stuff or whatever. So air raid comes from like if you hear the air raid siren, you have to like duck and cover. So this is what these girls are doing. Like, you know, they're ducking covering or whatever with like these pacifiers.
They're pouring ketchup.
They're pouring ketchup and mustard, oats, eggs, all this shit, flour. So that's what they're doing. And this is Why Can't We Be Friends comes on while they're doing all this. Because Darla's just being a bitch. She's just like saying, you know, that was pathetic. Get up. That means get up, you little freshman bitches. Get up. And she's like, you little freshman sluts. So it's very much like using bitch, slut, these different types of things that are very much not what men would do necessarily. And so then, you know, they're covering them all with this. And then making them have to... They put them on dog leashes. Because, again, women are dogs, apparently, if they're ugly.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, great. So, this is just, like, reiterating that, like, we want to, like, break you down, do all this, whatever. And then they have them go up to these people and propose to them.
Yeah.
Now, you see two different parts of it. And I actually kind of like the one thing. So... The one nice young girl, she's to propose to Mr. Dawson. And,
he was dirty.
Oh, yeah. Because the one girl, I don't even know if it was a main character of it. I don't know who it was, but she's like, I want you to propose to Mr. Dawson. And, you know, she gets on her knees. She's like, will you marry me? He's like, don't know what's in it for me. And then she's like, well, whatever you want. And he says, go like this. And she has to open her mouth or whatever. And he says, do you spit or swallow? And she's like, whatever you want.
Let me tell you. That went over my head as a kid.
Yes, because...
I did not know that.
I know. And then... But what I do like, though, so, like, this whole thing happened, and it's so cringy.
And then he's like, of course I'll marry you. It's like, oh, God.
No, it's so cringy because you know that, like, the actress playing the little extra actress, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you're being told something that you don't know what it is... But, like, you have to... Oh, God, it's so cringy.
Yeah.
And I do like how the girl, you know, when after he's been an asshole to her, she says, you're an asshole. Like, she's kind of thinking, like, this isn't fun to do anyway. Yeah. So, like, you're just making it worse. And he's, of course, like, yes, I am. Aha. Or whatever. But I do like how the girl did stick up for her a little bit. She says under her breath to Dawn, like, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, I at least am like, you know what? That's nice of her to do because... Don't be talking to a 13-year-old about this when she might not even know what any of this shit is.
Yeah.
Ugh. Disgusting. Yeah. That's the thing about this movie is it's just some of the misogyny that's in it a little bit and ugh.
But then Sabrina does it to Tony.
To Tony because Jodie's nice and she doesn't really want to do any of this shit, but she's just like having to pretend to be a bitch. But she does it to Tony and it's really nice. And you see them kind of spark up a little relation.
He's completely different.
He's completely different. He's really nice.
Of course, he's like, what's in it for me? And then she was like, what am I supposed to say? Anything you want? And then he's like, no, really. He's like, what's your name? Like,
yeah,
how you doing? Like, he's
I also like him and Mike's conversation of like, you know, I can't believe that like the community's like, you know, they're doing all this, like the selling refreshments, all this kind of stuff. Because like Adam Goldberg is interesting because I think he's a Jewish dude. I'm assuming. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just funny how like he's playing this sort of neurotic character.
Yeah.
He's a neurotic misanthropic character or whatever, which he says. But it's just funny because I'm just like, he's like, the way he talks is really funny because he's obviously from New York or something like that. Like, and we're supposed to pretend like he's in Texas, I guess. But anyway, so it's just really funny to me. I just think it's hilarious. But anyway, so they talk about that. But you were saying, like, they have that nice little bit of like, and this is like their little spark with, Sabrina and Tony. But we don't really find out more about that until a bit later. But we have that all kind of going on. So once we finished all this, and Darla's like, all right, I'm just like tired and I'm sick of looking at you. So, get in the truck or whatever. And she's like, wipe that face off your head, bitch. Which apparently came from like, Parker Posey had been in a play in college or whatever. And she did this play. That was a line in there, but it was just a really bad translation from German. Mm-hmm. So she was like, can I use this? I think it's funny. And he's like, yeah. Like the director was like, yeah. Sure.
And then, is this where they take him to the car wash?
The car wash, which probably would hurt.
Hose him down, yeah. I know, with all that stuff. And then also just like a car wash, fucking like going through that is not safe, y'all. But anyway, whatever. But they're trying to figure out how to get all the stuff off of him.
Exactly. So they're trying to figure out how to get all the stuff off them. Then we are seeing the gentlemen, the jocks, I guess. They're at the drive-in, I think, and we see that Melvin is his name, played by Jason O. Smith, the token black gentleman of this movie. They're there, and he actually picked up, because we see that Pink had thrown the pledge some other place while they were together. But he picked it up, and he brought it back to them.
This guy's like, get it away from me.
He's like, get it away from me. Like, is there anything else you need to tell me? So as the day fades into night, Mitch Kramer, he escapes the initial stuff, right? Mm. And so day's kind of going into night and everything, because this is where we're kind of going into the night of the time.
Right, the night after school.
Right, the night after the last day of school. So then we also get introduced to like some of these people's nights routines, because we were also getting the whole thing of like the girls getting, after they were at the car wash, they're being dropped off at their respective homes.
Yeah, Jodie invites her.
And Jodie invites Sabrina. She invites her out or whatever. She's like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll pick you up at 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we kind of see everybody's like little bit of like routines where they're doing of like, that was where we see the girl like zip up her pants while laying down and like.
Oh, but also we kind of we backtracked. I think we missed over something. Pinkford.
Oh, Pickford. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that happens too.
So somewhere
after the
we'll say it's the hazing.
We'll say it's the hazing, I think. After that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I just completely forgot about that. So that's actually kind of a big part of the movie. It is. So
Pink and Slater go to Pickford's house, where we see
they're all hanging out at Pickford's room.
And we see that his parents are about to go out of town, which is why they're going to have the party or whatever.
Yeah. They're packing up to go on a weekend trip.
Exactly. So then they go upstairs and they're like doing some reefer or whatever. And
he's got the door locked with a screwdriver.
Which I'm like, okay,
so funny.
Whatever. But anyway, so then we should
ask Mom if people did that. Like,
I don't know, actually. I don't know, man. But anyway, so we have that, like,
because the mindset was everybody's like, there's a party tonight at Pickford.
Right. Everyone's knowing about it. So
everybody's knowing that, like, the after school party, or, the school's out. First party of the summer is at Pickford's because his parents are going out of town.
Exactly.
That was the whole mindset. Everybody was going to go there and party it up.
Right, but then what happens is that the guy who's bringing the kegs comes a little too early, and they find out that, like,
his parents are still there because they're literally packing up to go.
Right, and he's like, oh, you need to come down and do this.
They're like, you need to come down, and they're like trying to like light the incense and like trying to like.
Right, they're trying to hide the smell of weed.
The door. And then that's where he takes the screwdriver out, and I'm like, "What the hell?" I was like, okay.
"Yeah." So he says, like,
he's like, "I think you need to come downstairs."
And it's really funny because, like,
his dad in his leisure suit.
Yeah, his leisure suit, and being that he's probably
which was very of times of the 70s.
Very much so. But anyway, and you can tell that, like, Pickford's like this, like, really kind of free, stoner dude.
Yeah.
And his father is complete opposite.
Yeah.
So very much like this kind of probably army vet or like some shit or whatever. And so very much like that. It was two different worlds.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then he goes downstairs and Kevin goes downstairs and talks to the guy in the beer truck.
Yeah.
He's like, I think you're a little early. I think you have the wrong address.
And he was like, look, I have a date tonight.
And be like, whatever.
You have the wrong address.
Right? And he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. All this. And so Kevin Pickard thinks he's like being slick, But he's like, not, because his parents are like, yeah, start unpacking. We're not going anywhere tonight.
Although, I was watching it, and I was like, I'd be pissed if I was the wife. I'd be like, God dang it, I want to go out.
I want to go. I don't care if our son's going to party. Like, what the hell? I want to get away from these children.
They start unpacking.
They start unpacking, so that all happens.
There is no party at those.
There's no party at Pickford's.
So that has to be made aware that...
And I think that's where we get into the guys at the drive-in or whatever.
Yeah.
So that all happens. Yeah, you're right. And then we hear the whole, like,
just because that's kind of how it was supposed to start. Like, everybody's like, hey, there's a party at Pickford's, and then... They have to kind of rearrange their night.
So we have that. We also we see Sabrina getting picked up by Jody and the girls. We see Darla, Siobhan, and I think Kay or whatever all together. And they're all talking. They're all like,
No, I think it was Simone.
Oh, it was Simone. Yeah, you're right. Okay, you're right. It was Simone,
Siobhan, and
Darla. They're all in the truck, and she's just like, what did she say about me? Like, what did she say?
Like, she called you a whore and you a slut.
Like, she called me a slut? Oh my god, I'm gonna kick her ass. I thought you were gonna get mad. I'm not mad. I think it's so funny. It's so stupid. I also like that Darla has like her little truck. I'm just like, okay, whatever. Right. But her Beetle, I don't know if it's Jody's Beetle, I think. Yeah. Jody's Beetle's everything. I love her. But anyway, so we have that. And it's just like showing them kind of cruising around like Austin, Texas or whatever. We see
and again, it's very of the 70s.
It's very of the 70s. We also see Wooderson in his first like shot where he's driving into the Top Notch Burger. So that's Matthew McConaughey. But anyway, so we see that and, they're kind of opening for business or whatever. But then we get into the baseball scene where we see, okay, Mitch is pitching for this baseball team and all this. And then who comes to the baseball game but these senior guys? So you have O'Banion, Benny, I think Melvin, who is Jason O. Smith, and then I think it's somebody else. I think Don's there too. And then Pink is there, but he doesn't come with them though. Yeah. But anyway, so he kind of does, and then he ends up going somewhere else. But, he's still at the game. So we see that, like, Mitch is kind of nervous, and he's, like, trying to, like, do this stuff so he can, like, get these people out, strike the guy out or whatever. And so we have this whole kind of, like, scene where it's, like, very, like, slow motion. Yeah. And he's, like, throwing this pitch or whatever. And then he ends up, like, I think they end up losing, I guess. I don't actually know. Or he strikes the guy out or whatever. Or
I think they win. I don't know.
I think they win or whatever. And then I like
they win or lose. I don't know.
They win or lose. And it's like they do the good game stuff or whatever. Which, by the way, Wiley Wiggins was so unathletic. So much so.
And apparently he lied.
Of like, oh yeah, I could do this. And then they were like, we're just going to get a stunt double to actually do the throw or whatever. Yeah. All you have to do is do this. Because he was so unathletic, and which is fine. But anyway, so there's that.
Props to him. He's like, I want this
role. So like, whatever. And then it ended up being like, he couldn't even catch a ball from like 3 feet away. Which I was just like, okay, dude. But anyway, it's fair. So we have that whole thing, but then we see that the senior boys are pretty much staking him out. Yep. And so in the meantime, we also see Pink, who has been at the game. He then is leaving, and he gets accosted by these two old people. And the one is like, because you're seeing that, like, Pink is probably so bored with the idea that he's this, like, he's the star quarterback, he's doing all this, which is funny to me, because I'm just like, what the hell? Like, he's this, like, not scrawny, but he's like lanky and like, thinking like he's a quarterback. Okay, cool, I guess. But you just see he's kind of bored with it all. Like these old people, this old guy's talking to him, like he gives a shit and whatever. He's like, well, he's nice. He says he's like, well, it was nice meeting you folks, da da da. But he's just so bored with it all and whatever. So you see him walking, but in the meantime, you also see that Mitch has been taken by the men, the senior dudes. And
they have
started to paddle him to No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yep.
Which has been
Alice Cooper classic.
Another Alice Cooper classic, and also was parodied on Family Guy and has been parodied other ways. But there's this, and apparently also there was some weird guy who apparently really got off on this and like sent Wiley Wiggin like fan mail or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, that's disturbing.
It is really disturbing. But he's also 16, so that's illegal. So ew. Like I understand that there's like paddling and spanking fetishes, being a gay, obviously, but like no, people have to be of age though. That's just weird. Anyway, but you see this, and in the meantime, you also see Pink kind of walking doing whatever. And he then comes across this, and so Banyan's just like fucking hyped. He's just like wants to keep,
yeah.
But he's like,
and they
no.
Tell Pink to get a lick, and
yeah, he tells him to get a lick.
He's acts like he's gonna wind it up and do it, but he really doesn't.
He really doesn't.
He just kind of hits them very like love taps.
Love tap, exactly. Yeah. So there's that, and then we also have...
He's really not all about getting these...
He's not.
Middle schoolers.
And also, too, I think Melvin also helped with that a little bit, too. Because I think Melvin was kind of like, all right, dudes, like, we did this. Like, let's lay off the kid. Like,
and his thing was called the soul pole.
The soul pole. I love that. What was Banyan's?
Fuck you.
Fuck you, or something like that.
It was F-A-H and then the space Q. And that went in my head for a long time, and then I finally realized that it meant for fuck you.
Yeah. I love that. I love Soul Pole. It's so funny.
And I think Benny said something, but I just can't remember.
I don't remember. His whole thing was the whole thing. But anyway, so there was that.
I just know he wasn't wearing his goggles.
He wasn't wearing his goggles. But yeah, so then... And it's nice. Like, I like Melvin because, like, he was even, like, really nice. He's like, oh, it's a bumper up pick for his party, blah, blah, blah. And he even says to Mitch, he's just like, hey, boy, take care of that butt. Like, it's just funny. Like, he's just like, I don't want to, like, have to... He understands it, So then Pink is all like... Do you need a ride? Like, what's going on? Yeah. He's like, yeah, I do. I think they left me. Yeah. And so we're then back in the car with Pink and Mitch. This is where I think we're supposed to infer that, not even just from their conversation, but we're supposed to infer that pretty much Pink was Mitch at one point. Pretty much. Yeah. Because they do talk about how, like, oh, how bad did they get you when you were a freshman? Like, oh, they waited for me at practice. And then they got me after that and whatever. You know, it's not too bad because after the first... It was vicious, but it's not that bad after the first few licks. And then, you know, it's nice. They'll get you some beers. Like, they'll bust you, but they'll, like, get you drunk or whatever and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, but in this case, I think we're supposed to assume that, like, at one point, Pink was, like, Mitch, pretty much. And... which is this whole story is partly Pink's kind of coming of what he wants, but then it's also Mitch's kind of coming of age sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So they get like, so he drops him off at Jody's house, which that's a whole other thing. There was actually stuff cut out of this scene where they talk about like, you know, whatever. But also there's a part of the deleted scene where Pink asks Mitch, is your sister going to be home tonight? Which is kind of funny, which we'll get into later. But anyway, so we see that, and so he drops him off at his house. It says, hey, like, you know, since there's not going to be a party tonight, I'll probably just cruise around with the guys. You want us to come pick you up? And be like, do you think it'll be okay? And be like, oh, well, yeah, no, man, you're good. Like, the other guys will give you some time beforehand. It'd actually be a really cool thing to do because... you know, it'll show that they're not, like, scared of him or whatever. He's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Hey, thanks for the ride, man. Like, it's really nice. So he gets all ready, and he, like, you know, this is, I think, where we all come to, like, everyone's doing their own little night routine things or whatever. Yeah. Like, we see, like, the geeks all in the car together. We see everybody in their own respective cars. There was a part where these, like, stoners go to Pickford's house because they were not made aware. They were not made aware. And then, so they open the door, and it's, like, they, like, knock. They're like, yeah, let's in. I think they even, like, actually try to open the door. Yeah, and then they're just like, oh, no. And then they run away, yeah. It's really funny. And there also is a little bit later in there, the geeks don't know either. Yeah. And so they go there, and then Mike's just like, nope. I think as part of this too, we also get. Not everybody got the memo that Pickford's party was. Exactly. There is so we see that Wooderson and Pink pick up Mitch and they take him, and this is where Wooderson's like, "Hey man, hey, you got a joint?" And he's like, "No, not on me, man." And he's like, "It'd be a lot cooler if you did." And it's just so funny. He's hilarious. I love him. The geeks also are like riding around in Cynthia's car, her boat. And so, like, this is where I love the line. So it's, you know, Mike is talking about what he wants to do with his life. He's like, oh, you know how I wanted to be an ACLU lawyer and blah, 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 whatever. I was at the post office the other day and people were looking really pathetic and all this kind of stuff. And be like, I don't think I really want to, I don't think I like people, period. Like, I just want to be honest about being a misanthrope or whatever. And he's like, well, if you don't want to do that, like, and then Tony's all like, you know, well, if you don't want to do that, then what do you want to do then? And then Mike's just like, I want to dance. So then we see that Wooderson and Pink and Mitch, they all go to this local pool hall called the Emporium, where they just play pool and they play video game or arcade games. Yeah. Like there's that and pinball and all that stuff.
Foosball,
all that kind of shit. So then as the night progresses, it really is just like these students like listening to music. They're cruising the neighborhood. They go to the Top Notch, which is the local little restaurant. And so at the Emporium, we are introduced to Mitch meeting Julie, who's played by Catherine Morris, I believe her name is. And she's a sophomore girl. And he's like, hey, like, what grade is she in? And he asks Pink or something. Oh, she's a sophomore. Like, do you like her? Like, do you want me to help you out with it or whatever? And so that's nice.
Also, I think because this is such a story goes, that there's just a lot of stuff going on. And around this part, or like a little bit before this part, was the junior high.
Oh, yes, you're right. So there is a part in here where it might be before they go to Wooderson's, or maybe after they get picked up and they go to the Emporium. But there is...
It's just Carl
Hirschfelder and their other friend.
Which I can't remember his name. It's horrible.
Oh, I don't know. Whatever. Some guy. Tommy or something?
Yeah, Tommy. They're all at the junior high.
Right, and that's where Love Hurts is. Yeah. Which is fun. And so we see that Hirschfelder is like macking on a girl and like making out.
I had my hand up her shirt.
I had my hand up her shirt. And so they all kind of leave because they're just like, this is boring.
So, like, we gotta go, yeah.
And so the guy who's like a chaperone, he's like, hey, if you leave, you can't come back in. And be like, oh no, we can't come back in. What do we do? Oh, fuck you, whatever.
Right. But then they're walking like down the, like the dark road. Well, I mean, it's dark in the sense where it's like lit up, but it's dark out. Unfortunately, there's some people behind them.
Yeah, so that happens.
Hirschfelder, they all
scatter
away, but
right,
they end up
they're
getting
leaving.
Hirschfelder, and they hit him against the fence, and they get him good.
Yeah, they get him good. And
then they start talking about it at the Emporium.
Oh yeah, you're right. So that all happens. So before that, so it's probably after Wooderson picks him up, and then we kind of see that.
Because Mitch is with them, yeah.
Because Mitch is with them. So yeah, but we see that junior high dance and all that, and they're talking about how like, oh, you didn't know she stuffs her bra, blah 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 blah, or whatever. And so Hirschfelder gets busted. Then we see the Jody and her friends come up and be like, hey, leave the kid alone, whatever. Yeah.
They throw him a beer.
They throw him a beer, and they give these girls beers or whatever, which is not good. Like, you should not give a girl who's driving a beer. Yeah. It's not good. But anyway. But yeah, and then somebody drives by and she's like, hey, fucker, I did. They're like, eat me. So they're all at least friends, and they're all like, standing up for each other. But there's that. Hirschfelder then gets back with his friends because he's like walking with them, and they're talking about like, I heard O'Banion like drove his truck over some pizzas and made these freshmen eat it or whatever. But they're all like sharing the beer too, which is kind of fun, which is something you do. And so they like throw the beer and they like, which I have done that before, and it's so bad. Do not throw a glass bottle just randomly. It'll come back down to do that. I'm so glad nobody got hurt. I was also in a different country when it happened too. So,
well, that in the cars.
Well, also that in cars. It was like 1 a.m. when this happened to me. But yeah, don't do that. It's really bad and you can hurt somebody. Little fun fact, I will say this too. And Mom, you might be listening to this and I don't really care. So I'm an adult. I distinctly remember my first time ever drinking was with this nice young lady here. Because our mother went away to Florida one Christmas, literally actually. We have family down there. And because this is one of the things like, oh, when was the first time you did like drink, or when was the first time you like smoked pot or whatever, all this kind of stuff if you've done that. Or like when was the first time you kissed somebody or like lost your virginity or whatever the fuck. Because there was actually a subplot out of this where there was the girls like at the Emporium, but apparently there was another girl who apparently lost her virginity and she talks to them about it or whatever. Oh. So that's kind of fun. But anyway, it was cut out though. Anyway, back to my story. So like, yeah, I remember specifically I was 17 and I was a senior in high school, and my sister here was dating someone different, and they were having a little party at our home when they weren't supposed to be, I don't think, maybe, I don't know. Our mom's pretty cool. But anyway, so she was doing that. We were all underage, though, by this point. I think maybe there were some people who were of age, but, like, a lot of us were underage, though. And so, yeah, I remember my little bit of drinking I did, and I drank Jaeger bombs. That was, like, my first thing I did.
My first time drinking, I was, like, 14.
I know. And there were photos of it on MySpace because it was a different time. Okay, listen. I remember that. Dude, I'm just telling you, man. Like, shame. I was a good girl and I didn't have sex until I was like literally 18. So whatever, but it's fine.
But yeah,
you were a little different, but it's all good. Anyway,
right.
But that's what this movie's about. It's about like coming of age, and it's about like when you did the stupid shit that you did. Because, you know, anyway, so back to this. So they have that, and then they go to the Emporium, like you were saying, and we see that like they go in the Emporium, they're all in there, and da-da-da. Then we also see some stuff where I think we see the geeks, they kind of like go to the party, and then they don't go, it ends up not being a party, and they're talking a little bit. But then, because they don't actually go to the Emporium, they go to Top Notch later. But we do see the girls, so Jodie and her friends and Sabrina, they're all just like taking the tops off of beer cans, and they're just like kind of doing this or whatever, flicking them and trying to do whatever. But this is where we get this after Hirschfelder's been busted, because they're all there, and then Mitch is there. He comes out of the Emporium, and he sees Sabrina. He's like, oh, hey, I know you. And they start talking a little bit. But yeah, so Sabrina says, yeah, they just got Hirschfelder too. They got him bad, all this. Be like, oh, I hate that jerk. And so this is the fun where, like, apparently there's a drinking game with this where you just drink every time Wiley Wiggins just touches his face.
Oh, and he like touches his nose. I think he said like 13 times.
So many times. And so you'll be dead by the time you're done.
Yeah.
So you'll just be wasted.
He's like, God, I hate that guy. He keeps doing that. And I'm
like,
dude,
God.
What are you doing? Like, he does it several times.
He does it several times throughout the movie. So there's that, which I just thought was really fun. And so, yeah. So we have that going on, but we do see
in the meantime, I think that you have cars coming and going, and I think you have like a toke ride for like one of the, I think like Pickford.
Yeah, it's Pink, Pickford, Dawn. This is where they have him drink for the first time, and they also, he smokes marijuana for the first time, Mitch does.
Yeah, and then they go and
oh, and they also, so they're doing this thing.
They're taking the trash cans.
They're playing mailbox baseball. Mm-hmm. Which is so rude because they're
bowling ball.
And a bowling ball, because he's like, whose bowling ball is this? It's yours now. So they're like doing this, and they're like throwing these trash cans at these mailboxes and all this. And then they take the bowling ball out of the back seat where Mitch is, and he throws it and he knocks somebody's windshield out.
And in the meantime, while they're driving, we need more beer.
Which again, this is like so infuriating because like, the one thing with tampering with mailboxes, but bitch, like that is somebody's car. They have to go get like a new windshield now.
Right.
But when you're a teenager, you don't think about that stuff.
Like, whatever.
That's why I think this movie works with teens really well, because they're just like, oh my God, these are the stupid things we've done, and these are the stupid things you do when you're a teenager or whatever. Yeah. But they say, oh, we have to get more beer. So they go to this place, and Dawn's like, you know, I'm going to pay for the beer. Like, I just needed like distraction or whatever. So like Mitch is outside the place waiting for him to come in and whatever. And then we see that there's this car that pulls up, and they go back in the car or whatever. But there's this guy who's like brandishing a gun, and he's like, he's called the police. He's like, you know, tampering with mail is a federal offense, da-da-da-da-da. So he's just like pointing this gun at these boys, and they're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, they're like scared shitless.
I would be too. I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? So then they end up escaping. So like,
just drive. Yeah.
Just drive. So like
put his car
Don puts his car into gear, and then like Pickford just like guns it. And so they're driving, but then the guy's like shooting at them, which is crazy. And then you're just like, holy fucking shit. But anyway, so that's when they come back to the Emporium. Oh, this is where Melvin says, hey, go get me one of these or whatever, because the drinking age was 18 at this time. So some of these people could actually drink. And so he like goes over and does this. Which I think this scene's kind of fun, because he goes over to this liquor place. He gets like a sixer or whatever.
I like how, but here's another funny thing I thought is when he goes into the liquor store or the convenience store, wherever it is, he buys it, and he was like, and be sure to
eat a green thing every day.
He's talking to this pregnant, you know, teen
woman,
or young adult, and she's like very visibly pregnant, probably about the burst. She's
just like smoking.
She's smoking, and then you can see she's got like wine, or she's got like a 40, or she's got some type of, it's like in a brown paper bag. She's clearly got like something to drink. I'm like, oh, this is nice.
It's so funny. I love that too. Yeah. And then so he goes up to this guy, this clerk or whatever, and he...
how this clerk thought he was 18 is beyond me.
I know, because he's like...
But he's like, you're 18,
oh,
right?
Because beforehand, when they have the whole scene of like, they have Wooderson and like other people are meeting him or whatever, and that's when he has this whole thing where he says like, so, you know, you're a freshman, right? Like, what's about these...
This is one of the best... I mean...
It is an iconic line.
It's a very iconic line, and I know, kind of looking back on it,
it's creepy.
It's creepy, and it's, like, misogynist, like...
Yeah.
Like, the way he does it. But I'm sorry, it's an iconic scene.
And where he says, like,
and
you know...
it's an iconic quote.
Yeah, it's an iconic quote. And he's all like, that's what I like about these high school... Because even, like,
because he's like,
Don...
what's the freshman crop looking like this year?
And then Don's like, you're going to go to jail soon.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, that's what I like about these high school girls, man. I get older, they stay the same age. Yes, they do. And you're just like, oh, Jesus Christ.
But it's like, he's not wrong, but at the same time, it's like, ew.
Ew, gross. Also, that's the same place where you see Renee Zellweger walk by, but you don't actually know it's her. So that was kind of fun. Yeah. Anyway, so then Mitch goes over and gets the beer or whatever. And the fact that this guy even thought he was 18, but the reason was because... Wooderson's talking about how, like, I might go back to college, I might go to junior college, but maybe I'll just keep working for the city, keep a little change in my pocket, which is literally what Mitch says to the guy. Because he doesn't know. He's a 14-year-old. Right. Like, he doesn't know anything. And then this guy just, like, sells him the beer, and they're just like, okay. So before he goes back, he sees his friends. Because, you know, he got busted, you know, Hirschfelder got busted or whatever. And so they see him there and be like, oh, you're over at the Emporium? Like, that's cool. And then, you know, Mitch is like, you owe me one, man. Like, you left me. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. And then they're like, is O'Banion over there? And be like, yes. Like, I hate that jerk. Yeah. Hey, do you guys want to get him back?
Yeah, I hate that jerk.
Like, you know, whatever. And touch his nose. And so we have that. And so, like, what ends up happening is he goes over, he gives Melvin his sixer or whatever, and he takes one. And then they're like, okay, but this is where Mitch is plotting. Yeah. So he sees O'Banion is like, you know, playing pool with somebody. He ropes in his crush, Julie, because he's like, hey, can you do me a favor? And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I think even Don says something. He says, like, you know, that Julie girl, like, loves you.
He's like, she likes you.
I mean, she likes you, but you gotta play a little hard to get. Like, you know, if she offers you a ride, say, like, you know, I'll think about it, right? So then he ropes his crush in, and he says, like, hey, can you do this for me? So the whole thing that they do is that Mitch has made it where Julie says something about Carl Burnett getting busted. Yeah. And so they do the stage's whole elaborate thing. She walks by O'Banion, specifically. And
O'Banion's ears pop up. Like
he pops up, and he's just like, oh, wait, what are you talking about? Be like, oh, just, I heard he's getting busted, whatever. So then he's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to get my shit together. I'm going to go out, and I'm going to, like, fuck that little fucker up. And so he, like, goes over across the road from the Emporium at this, like, little garage or whatever, where Carl is, like, up against the wall. And he's like, okay, let me do this. Like, and he says, like, did you hear this little fuck's mom, like, pull a gun on me today? Blah, blah, blah. This motherfucker. Da, da, da,
apparently he wanted to use cocksucker.
He wanted to use cocksucker, but he couldn't.
This was in this documentary, and then one of the guys like, you can't say that. And I'm like, and motherfucker's better.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who cares? But anyway, so different time, and movies and all that stuff. But anyway, so yeah, you have that, and then you see that, like, he's about to, like, wind up and do this. He's about to, like, bust the hell out of him. And then you see that, like, this little bit of paint has come down from the roof. Yeah. And so then he's like, hey, remember me, jerk? Wee! Because he said, like, squeal like a pig. And so he did that to Hirschfelder. They dumped the paint on him. And he's just so pissed.
Oh, he's so mad.
It's so mad because he's been embarrassed by these young freshmen or whatever. And so now his masculinity has been compromised and, like, all this shit and whatever. And so then he's like just ready to fight anybody at this point. And he goes back to the Emporium. He, like, almost fights with Mitch because whatever, he doesn't really. And then he gets in his car, his muscle car. He just drives off. Yeah. And then we kind of don't see him again until the end, like at the party or whatever, I think. We see him a little bit there, but this is like our last little bit of seeing a Banyan. Because he is our main villain of this piece, I guess. Yeah. Kind of, sort of. So there's that. Who they just leave in a fit of rage kind of a thing. So, because the Emporium has to close at some point, this keg party is being, planned by Wooderson and all this.
Don't they go back to the Top Notch Burger?
They do go back to Top Notch because the geeks have been talking a little bit, and they talk about how, do you ever feel like everything is just like preparation for stuff? Like, it'd be like, yes, but what are we preparing for? It'd be like death. And then I think Tony says life of the party. And then Cynthia's all like, that's valid though, because like if we're supposed to be living, for this, I would like to stop thinking of the present as some preamble to something else or whatever. It's real deep. I thought that was just so deep when I was like 15 when I watched this. But anyway, so, right. But they decide like you have to get a little bit of like experience. So they say, we need some alcohol. Well, that's a thought, So that's when they go to Top Notch Burger, right? Mm-hmm. And they Tony says not
for long, I would like to try Top Notch Burger.
I kind of want to as well. That would be kind of cool. Just to have it and be kind of fun. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so you have this there at the Top Notch Burger. And then you see that... So the geeks are in their car, and then Wooderson comes up in his car with Slater.
Like, all right.
And he's into Cynthia. And he's he's like, there's a party going on. It's at the Moon Tower, all this kind of stuff, whatever. And then I love how he's all like, do you need a ride? And she's like, no, I have my own car, but
she's
thanks.
Sitting in a car, dude.
She's sitting in a car. Like, she doesn't need a ride. Be like, well, you should get out and join us, but that's fine, whatever. I will see you later. It just I always thought that was really funny because I was just like, first off, the way he delivers it is really funny, but then also just dude, she is in a car. What do you think she's going to do? Just, leave her friends and get with you? No.
Oh, let me just get in the car, yeah.
I have my own car. We're good. But, and then they're all just ew, Cynthia, what, did you realize, he was, 20 by the time we were in 3rd grade or whatever? She's like, I thought he was cute. She's, picking her little afro hair or whatever. I thought she was so cute. And then be like, oh, God, Cynthia, what were you thinking? And she's like, I don't know. Well, are we still going to go? You're like, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah. So then this is where we kind of get that whole thing of they get together and they're starting to all head over to the Moon Tower, which is this tower with these lights on it or whatever. So after the Emporium closed, they go over here. It's planned under this tower. So they're all kind of arriving separately. We see the kegs getting set up. In the meantime, earlier in the film, we see that Michelle has painted these Kiss statues, and they're bringing them to the party as well. So they're all kind of there, and they're all respectively coming up. So you see Jodie and her friends coming. You see, the geeks all coming as well, and, whatever. They're all kind of getting together. We then see that... so the geeks come up and they arrive, and it's Mike who says something of oh, hey, someone's token some reefer. And so this guy, Clint, who's this tough dude or whatever, played by Nicky Katt, is about to he's getting on Mike or whatever. Mike's just this guy who's not even trying to do anything, but he just makes an observation. But this guy is kind of a tough machismo guy. So he's just well, what the fuck are you talking about, fucker? And so there's all that. Mike is just seething with how he feels about this now. Yeah. But then also we see that Tony runs into Sabrina again, with who he met earlier and all that.
I think the Clint guy was I'm here
to
kick ass and drink beer.
And I'm almost run out of beer.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we have that. And everyone's just kind of showing up at the party and everything. So that's all nice and fun.
Yeah, different times.
At different times. So then you have these different... So the jocks, for example, they have their own little kind of storyline where Pink comes there. And you also have the stoners there, too, because this is where Rory...
They still want him to sign the thing.
They still want him to sign the thing, but we also have the stoners here who, they go up to the top of the Moon Tower and they're up there with Mitch and everything. But they also have the speech with Slater, who's talking about George Washington and how he was growing weed or whatever, and Martha Washington was a hip lady, which is kind of referenced in Can't Hardly Wait a little bit. If you've ever watched that movie, I think they reference that a little bit, which is kind of funny. But anyway, but they talk about that, and then the stoners go up to the Moon Tower, Pink and all them with Mitch go up to the Moon Tower, and they talk about hey, this has never been this is dangerous. So like, watch your step, Junior, because they call him Junior throughout. And so they go up here, they watch like the town. They're like, there's nothing going on in this fucking town, whatever. They're all just kind of up there and then they come all back down. Tony is with Cynthia and Mike, but Mike's like seething from like the sky or whatever.
Right.
Cynthia is just kind of like hanging around other people, and she does the whole thing where like, it's like the every other decade theory. Like the 50s were boring, the 60s rocked, the 70s, oh my God, they're obviously like, they suck. So maybe the 80s will be better. And girl, Cynthia, the 80s are a shit show too, so don't worry.
Yeah.
Just more cocaine at this point. And Ronald Reagan in office. But anyway, but Tony and Sabrina are kind of getting together a little bit. There's also a deleted scene as part of this where like
Darla goes up to her.
Yeah, Darla goes up to her, but there's like a little deleted scene that happened before that where like she's talking about why she was in the truck and like how she wanted things in high school to be different. She doesn't say all this, it's in the deleted scene, but like that's kind of why it is. Because you see they're kind of getting together and getting all that. But then yes, Darla does come up to her. Before that though, Darla is in part of the, montage or whatever. And we do see there is an uncredited Renee Zellweger appearance where she's the one who's holding the beer bong for Darla, which I thought was funny. You see her more head on, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, Darla comes up to her and she's like, air raid freshman. And she's just like, air raid. And she's like drunk as hell.
Yeah.
And so Tony's all like, she doesn't have to air raid because she's with me, like whatever. She's like, air raid freshman, 5 seconds. And she's like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm going to make your life a living hell. And she's just like, lick me, all of you. She's just like drunk. So it's one of those things where it's kind of just,
such your spirit animal.
She is so just like wonderful and wonderful. I love her. She's like a deeply flawed person because she's the female villain pretty much.
Yeah.
But like, she is so wonderful and I love her a lot. But anyway, but she's drunk and it's showing like this girl who thinks she's something, like
right.
She's just drunk and she's not actually probably going to make Sabrina's life a living hell, like whatever. She's just doing that because she gets off on having power.
Yeah. Kind
of a thing. So there's that. Is
also, and you were talking about the fight, like they were talking about fighting at like
they were talking about that. You're right.
Like Mike was talking about fighting, and he was like, well, usually at these type of parties, he was like, you only get 1 or 2 punches in, and then it gets broken up. So that kind of plays back into it. So that kind of plays back into it right around this time. But I think beforehand, we do see that Pink and Benny, they're in a truck together, and they're talking about like how, we had these good times, and yada yada. Be like, I don't want you to leave, Pink. Like, I don't want you to leave the team, because this is kind of a big thing of this is like, oh, is he going to leave the team or whatever? Which we end up finding out, yes, he is, I guess. But it's just these other jocks are trying to like, Melvin kind of did it with like getting the pledge to him earlier. Now Benny's all like, I don't want you to leave the team, man. Like, whatever, you got to think of us too. And then he's just like, I just want it to be on my terms though, whatever. So Benny's not really happy with that either, I don't think. He confronts him about it. It violates his individuality, his beliefs, and all that stuff. So there's all that. I think this is before the fight, but this is before the fight. Jody and so after Pink leaves Benny, Jody and Pink, they just like go off into the woods and decide to make out, even though earlier you obviously Simone's there. Yeah, you're like, that's his girlfriend. That's his girlfriend, so what are we doing? So that's why it's interesting with the little deleted scene of when Pink and Mitch are in the car together, of like, oh, is your sister home? It's like, what were you doing beforehand, though? Yeah. Anyway, but there's that. Implies that maybe they had a little side thing going on. Exactly. And we also note that her outfit is really cute. Yeah. Holy shit. It's not a romper, because I think a romper would be all together. It'd be one outfit. It was a 2-piece. It was like this denim top and then like these, like the jeans. It was really cute. So then you have that, and then the party's kind of coming down, it's kind of like, it's starting to, the fight then happens, so Mike is like pissed, and he's like, he like does something to Tony, and he's just riling himself up. Yeah. And so he goes over and he dumps his beer on the guy Clint, and so that starts a fight. He gets one punch in. And then Clint pretty much kicks his ass. Yeah. Which to me is funny, because I'm just like... it looked like, as they were saying, there were people that break it up with, it looked like Benny or one of the guys like kind of push the people away that were going to try and break it up.
Yeah, I think so.
Not break it up right away. And then I believe Wooderson and Pink,
they end up...
you can see that he's kind of getting pummeled.
He's getting pummeled. They're the ones who actually break it up.
Yeah, they actually come in there.
Even though Tony is trying to get in there just at least a little bit, what is he going to do? Nothing.
Yeah.
And even like Cynthia kind of was like, oh shit, that's Mike. Like, we got to go. So that all happens and, he's just kind of crying, I think, afterwards.
He's just like, what the hell? Yeah.
What the hell, man? So the party's starting to die down.
They have the scene where they're like trying to get the beer out of the keg. The keg's like tapped out.
It's tapped out.
It's time to go home.
It's time to go home. This is where Jody is all like, hey, because Mitch is walking away with Julie, and he's all like, hey, little brother, like, I guess I just have to get used to seeing you at the same social functions and blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, don't think that mom won't be waiting up for you later because, I got it bad when I was your age.
Yeah.
Be like, whatever. And so her and her friend go off to like smoke a joint somewhere or whatever. Yeah. Because then Julie is like, because before that, Pink is all like, hey, like, you should get a ride with Julie and go do whatever. Like, just say we left you. Like, whatever. Yeah. It'll work. I promise. So it's like, oh, okay. They're helping him out. Whatever. So then you have all this kind of going on. So like, Wooderson gets, like, Cynthia's number. And then, like, Mike has his tail between his legs when he's like walking away. The geeks are all going to go get breakfast. And so they invite Sabrina with them.
Pancakes, I think.
Pancakes or whatever the hell, right. They all kind of go in their separate ways. So we see the geeks go off and we see them kind of go off. And then we see that Sabrina is dropped off at her house and she kisses Tony and they have this kind of like thing going on, which is nice. Yeah. Even though it's weird because she's like 14 and he's supposed to be like 17. So that's a little weird. Yeah, a little weird. They are very sweet though. And I do like them as a couple and it's very cute. But then beforehand, so we have all the other friends kind of getting together and they're like, hey, like, let's go to the 50-yard line. Let's smoke a joint on the 50-yard line. That's what we'll do.
And that was Wooderson,
Pink, Dawson, Siobhan, and then Simone. And Slater, yeah. So they're all together. They all decide.
So the other jock guys, they just kind of
leave or whatever. They're kind of going their separate ways. And the whole thing, like, there's a thing throughout the whole the whole movie where Slater just keeps wanting to get shotgun, but he doesn't. Yeah. It's really, really funny.
He's like, I'm getting shotgun.
I'm getting shotgun. So as the night turns to dawn, so these 6 people or whatever, they decide to go smoke, some pot on the 50-yard line or whatever. And this is when they have their like little like kind of existential type thing going on where they're talking about like this again. It's kind of the crux of this movie where like Pink is kind of pulled between two worlds. He's pulled between the jock world. He's pulled between the stoners, his friends as well, and he's deciding to kind of be with these guys. And so they all kind of talk about, like, Wooderson talks about, like, how, well, it was like this back when I was, like, younger or whatever. I got told the same stories. I got, the same shit. They've always been trying to, like, keep you down. But, like, all you can do is just keep living, LIVIN or whatever. And so, and the more the rules that they'll try to keep setting rules for you. So, like, you just got to keep trying to, do what you can or whatever. That's not saying don't follow rules, but like, I'm just saying like, yeah, that is true. Like people will just keep kind of like putting all these like expectations on you. They'll keep putting these different things in front of you. So just try to live your own goddamn life and, have some fun in the meantime. So there's that. And then Don has a fun little line where he's talking about like, cause Pink says something about like, if these are like the best years of my life, remind me to kill myself or whatever. He's like, well, I don't think of it that way. I think of it as like, I was having as much fun as I could in this place. I had as much fun as I could in this place. I fucked as many people as I could in this place. And I think that can really kind of, I think that can kind of speak to, especially people who maybe are just like in their own small towns or whatever. And they end up just like staying there. But it's like, well, I want to make the most of it. And I think that's why teens really like this movie, obviously. Yeah. Because it's like, yeah, I mean, some of you will move out of your town and you'll be able to go somewhere else that whatever works for you. But then some people will stick around and that's not bad either. There's plenty of people that do that and then make their own life for themselves. But like, yeah, it's like you're just trying to have as much fun as you can where you're at.
It'd be kind of cool, like, at the end of it, even though they don't do it, like, to see, like, who would have done what.
Yeah. Kind of like Fast Times, where they do a little bit of that at the end. Yeah. But they didn't. But, just to kind of see what they end up doing and all that kind of stuff, it would have been fun. Yeah, but I do think that's why teens really like this movie, too, is just like, yeah, it's very much like I'm just trying to have fun while I'm here, while I'm alive and able-bodied to do so and all that. And, I'm just trying to have a good time where I'm at in my small little town I'm in fucking Texas. And I think that's a sentiment that is kind of universal a lot of the time, too, which is why I think this movie's really timeless. But anyway, in the meantime, the police get called, and they call Coach Conrad, because they're like, oh, what were you doing on the 50-yard line? We know what you're doing.
They make him get out,
They all have to go under the gate, and of course they're all skinny enough to just get through there in the 70s. So I was like, okay, cool.
I'm like, nobody of thickness could have got through there.
No, man. Who knows? Jodie had a little bit of thickness on her, too. Hell yeah. But anyway, so Coach Conrad is there. It's like dawn. He's like, come to the school. Yeah. He's like, why am I being like woken up by police? Yeah. He like lectures him on hanging out with these losers, and he insists that like, you need to sign this pledge, da-da-da-da. So Pink is like, he might play football, but he's not going to sign this. These losers are some really good people in my life.
And he throws the thing at him.
He throws the thing at him. And so Don's just kind of like, so that's it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'm quitting before my senior year. Fuck this. Like, I'm not into it anymore. And I'm going to go hang out with my friends.
Y'all can still be friends, right?
But y'all can still be friends, though. So then Pink leaves with his friends. He leaves with Wooderson, Simone, Slater, not Dawn, I don't think.
No, Dawn and Chevelle go.
Yeah, Dawn and whatever her name is. Yeah, Chevelle. They go away because they date. And so they all...
Just the four of them.
It's just the four of them. They are leaving to go get Aerosmith tickets in Houston. While also, before that, we see Mitch coming back home. Because beforehand, Mitch was in like a little field with Julie. And they were like making out and stuff. I was like, okay. Julie's kind of cute too. She's got some thickness to her. Like, she's cute. So I was like, okay, girl, with your little eyeshadow and everything, you better do it.
They were having a little makeout session in the field on a blanket. Like, that's right, Mitch.
Real cute. I loved it. But Mitch arrives home drunk, and his mother is waiting up for him.
Sister did warn him that don't think mom's not going to be waiting for you, because she will be.
Yes, she will.
So he's like trying to
He's like trying to get in there, but he's like, oh no.
And then she's like,
right.
Hey.
You're like, hey, but she decides against punishment. She's like, listen, I hope you had a good time.
Right.
If you come in again, like, we're going to have a different story. Yeah. And she's like, and who's this older girl who gave you a ride? And then Mitch is just like, oh,
he's all slurred,
whatever. And she's like, are you drunk?
He's like, no.
No, of course not.
And then the iconic slow ride.
Yes, so he puts his headphones on.
Going
to bed now because he's been up all night.
Yeah. However slow rides begins.
Yeah, and he just does slow ride.
It's a really cool, to the end of it, like, he puts that on to listen to his music after it was like fun, it's kind of a shitty night, but turned good, and then he's putting his music on, and then it goes into the other scene of
the guys, of the people
four in the car driving, just laughing, having a good time, trying to get Aerosmith tickets.
Yeah, and there you go, and then y'all, that's the end of Dazed and Confused. So, I mean, needless to say, with this movie, I personally really enjoy it. It's like a 5-star film for me. I've said that about a couple of these movies, but it's really because they are. I mean, I have a certain level of nostalgia for this movie. I think it's really fun, and...
I feel the same way. I could definitely watch this movie like over and over. I don't really get tired of it.
No, not really.
I have quite a couple movies that are like that, but it definitely is one of those movies where I know what happens like the whole way through. I know the line. Yeah. I mean, maybe not every line, but
a lot of them.
It's definitely a fun movie to watch. That again, if you're having a shit day, put this movie on and it'll give you some laughs. Yeah, and it reminds you of I think also it reminds you of just like a different time in the world. Mm-hmm. I feel like most of it is kind of historically accurate of what was going on at the time a little bit. Not all of it is, but most of it is. And I think it's also just like, it reminds you of being a teenager. Like we were talking about earlier, you were talking about your story with like tech education, but like, it is very much like, being a teen is weird. And people are telling you what to do all the time, and like, you're trying not to like. You're too young to be an adult.
You're too young to be an adult.
Like an adult.
But you want to act like
it's a weird time,
right? And you're trying to like.
Think it's gonna be forever till I'm an adult. I always remember feeling like that when I was younger. I can't wait to be 16. I can't wait to be 18. I can't wait to be 20 something. And I was like, I I'm never going to get this age. Like, not that I never thought I was going to get to that age, but you just, when you're younger, you just feel like, oh my God, like your birthday, like, you know, it feels so far away. Like, when am I going to get to these pivotal ages? I always remember thinking that when I was like 8 or 9. Like, oh my God, when am I going to be 16? And then the years go by and you turn 16 and you're like, okay. And it's just like the funniest thing. Like, how I thought that it was going to take, and now I'm sitting here at 30-some years old, 33 years old. And it's like, wow. It's because I tell you what, once you, like, if you know this or you don't know this, quite honestly, once you, like, pass 25, your years just, like, poof.
I know. It's like, crazy.
I just can't believe he turned, the one who has the podcast, my brother, Jesse, is turned 30 this year. Sorry to throw your age out there.
Oh, wow. Rude.
But it's okay. Hey, you're younger than me, so it's okay. But he just turned 30, and it's, like, wild to me. But I just remember that feeling of, like, being, you know, young, being a kid, and wanting to be these ages of these kids, and then being, you know, even an adult where I'm at now, and it's like, man, when am I going to get there? Here I am. Yeah,
and then it's one of those weird things, too, where it's like...
And then you kind of want to go back to yourself, slow down, don't want that.
Oh, I know, right? Like, you're just like, don't worry about it. Like, oh my God.
I wish I could take my time back and...
A little bit, yeah.
Well, not take time back, I just wish that... I wish you could know the future, and... Well, I guess you wish you don't... I don't want to say that, but I should say is... I wish you could just slow it down and not want to wish to be older.
Yeah.
And really live more in the moment. Especially, you know, once you know people who pass and people who come in and out of your life.
Right.
And, you know, just to know that, you know, you wish you had more time with, you know, a certain person or family or things. Your life's change. You move, you do this, you do that. And it's just like, you know, just to be a kid, it's just...
yeah, and being in that high school time where not a whole lot really, you had to think of a whole lot.
And things change a lot in high school.
And it's just different.
It's a pivotal, like, time in your life.
I agree, so which is why there's all these movies about it.
Yeah.
Because it is a big time in your life. And then even looking...
Life changes, there's hormones, there's all kinds of stuff that happens.
There's this pressure of having to be cool, and this, what is cool even? There's this pressure you get to, like... I know for me at least, like when it comes down to it, like one of the things I kind of wonder is like, well, what would have happened if I had come out earlier?
Yeah.
Right? And like, if I was just doing that, but who's to say what would happen?
Yeah.
Like, I think I came out the right time that I was supposed to. I was an adult by then technically, and I could make my own decision and say, yep, I'm gay. I like men and whatever. And who's to say if I did that before, like I was just going to get reamed by it. Like, and people could have really just hurt me or whatever the hell, you know, I didn't want that. So, you know, you just never know, and you just try your best, and we're all just, you know, real life Sims is crazy. Okay, listen. But, like, you know, it's, we're all just trying to live, and I think that's what the crux of the story is, in a way. Like, it's just, this is what high school is, kind of, sort of, but not really. But, like, it's still fun,
and how it was back then. Yeah.
And how it was back then, and all this, and it's very much Richard Linklater's kind of story, if you will, so,
It's a fun fun and silly plot in a way.
Yeah.
It's got funny quotes,
it has
quotes.
A bunch of crazy celebrity people who weren't big yet.
And it's got, like, insane music soundtrack.
Exactly. So it's just, it all kind of amalgamates into this one really cool movie that I really like. Yeah. It's currently on Tubi right now if you want to watch it. It was on Prime for a minute. So it was on there a little bit. You can get the Criterion collection of this too, so you can get it all nice and pretty. But you can also, like I said earlier, you can get this with a double feature with Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is what I have, and it's great. But yeah.
I just have the regular DVD.
And you have the regular DVD from millions of years ago.
Nothing special.
But nothing special. But yeah.
Just the DVD.
Yeah, exactly. But Sarah, thank you so much for coming to my show again. I really appreciate it. I know you wanted to do this real bad, so I'm glad we got to talk about this wonderful, wonderful movie. And yeah, I think that's everything I can think of. You have any other parting words?
Nope.
All right, everyone. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com. In case you want to give any movie recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you just want to say hey, I'm open to all of it. You can also follow the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram handle is Cult Cinema Circle, and Twitter handle is Cult Cinecircle. On those platforms, I tend to announce the different episodes I'm going to be doing. I'll make little Instagram stories when we have an episode drop and just generally interact with anybody on there that wants to interact with me. You can also follow me on Letterboxd at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On there, I log the movies that I watch and write little reviews about them and just general foolishness over there. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much out there everywhere. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review so we can grow the audience more and also just spread the love all around. Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 1995's Clueless. Cher, a high school student in Beverly Hills, must survive the ups and downs of adolescent life. Her external demeanor at first seems superficial, but rather it hides her wit, charm, and intelligence, which helps her to deal with relationships, friends, family, school, and the all-important teenage social life. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, and remember, you just gotta keep living, man. Livin. Take care. Bye.